And now, welcome everyone to ENDORSE 2021. This is on day 2, Law as Code and Interoperability. And this is track 2 on fundamentals of law as code and interoperability. We talked a lot yesterday about intergovernmental, and now we're talking about law as code. Building and enhancing and integrating taxonomies. This is part 1 of a workshop that is led by Semantic Web Company with 2 people, Hedden, taxonomist, professional services team of Semantic Web Company. Through Hedden Information Management, you also teach an online course in taxonomy creation. You're also the author of The Accidental Taxonomist, quite an intriguing title. And Helmut Nagy, Chief Operating Officer, COO at Semantic Web Company. So welcome to both of you. I might mention a couple of tech tips. For those of you participating, you can send questions, comments in the chat. You can also go on and speak if you want. You can let us know that you'd like to pose your question or discuss on camera if you would like, or off camera. As this is a workshop, keep in mind a hashtag endorse 2021 if you have anything to tweet about this. It's good to cast it wider. When you do go online to speak, make sure you're try to look in the camera and mics off when you're not speaking. And this will be recorded for future viewing. I think that's about it. I will hand it to Heather and Helmut, so you'll be in good hands.
Okay.
Yes, hello.
All right, we're sharing now. Building, enhancing, and integrating taxonomies. Thank you, Chris, for the introduction. I don't think we need to say too much more about ourselves. Did you want to add anything, Helmut, about yourself?
No, I think that's fine. maybe just in the second half, we plan some at least one more interactive thing, yeah, and we would invite up to 5 people. I paste now my email address because I found that maybe you pasting email addresses here is not good for GDPR reasons, so I paste mine. Though if there are 5 people that want to participate there, send me an email, and then we will set up the account for this interactive session, and you should get mail.
Okay.
And I think, Heather, also we wanted to say that we will do some question answering after each section.
Yeah.
You can paste whether ask questions in chat, yeah, and then Chris was kind enough to say he will read them out for you. But
That's
since
right.
You also can open the microphone, I hope yourself, you can also then just ask your questions directly.
Okay, yeah, here's the outline. Actually, the interactive part where we want a few participants is in part 2, the example of card sorting. Now, you see we have this designed into 3 parts, and we have a 2-part workshop. We have a break in the middle, and we didn't realize that when we designed this. So I'm not too sure we're going to end somewhere in the middle of part 2 or so, whenever the time is. I will do more of the presenting, but Helmut will lead the card sorting and the other activities in part 2, and I'll do one in part 3. But Helmut will also join in anytime. And so we'll pause after some sections for questions, but please feel free to put them in the chat at every time. Now, we expect that many of you have had some dealings with taxonomies and knowledge and other kinds of knowledge organization systems, but it's good to get a grounding of what the range of the different kinds are, because you might be expanding into others and how to build them further and then integrate them. So this is not an introduction to taxonomies. And if you want an introduction to how to create a new taxonomy from scratch and best practices for creating concepts and their labels and relationships, I do teach workshops in that, and I'm giving a few actually virtually at conferences, so you can connect to me about that. All right, let's get started with part 1. We're going to give a background on the types and standards, comparisons, uses, and combinations of different knowledge organization systems. Okay, so knowledge organization systems, this is really at the broader high level that, includes taxonomies and ontologies and thesauri and other kinds, terminologies or classifications as well. The idea is to organize, define, and manage information. Now, they're called knowledge organization systems, but it's not really a method to organize knowledge directly. It's really it's a scheme to organize the concepts or the terms or the classes or whatever to then organize knowledge. You've probably also have heard of controlled vocabularies. Controlled vocabularies are a subset of knowledge organization systems, which are specifically for information retrieval. So this would be term lists, synonym rings, name authorities, taxonomies, and thesauri. This list of knowledge organization systems kind of represents the more simpler at the top and more complex near the bottom. So we get to semantic networks and ontologies near the bottom of the list, but they're also important. Okay, so now I'm going to narrow down and look at controlled vocabularies, the subset for information retrieval, term lists, synonym ring, name authority, taxonomies, and thesaurus. Although sometimes taxonomy can refer to any controlled vocabulary, and I will talk about ontologies as well as an important knowledge organization system that's not within the realm of controlled vocabularies.
And we also see it a bit different here, I would say, like it's seen sometimes, so we'll try to point it out. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Very good, just running ahead here. Okay, so it's term lists. They're most often used as values within metadata fields, and they could be drop down boxes, scroll boxes in the user interface. The idea is there's no hierarchy, there are no synonyms or variants, and each term list is part of a larger set of controlled vocabularies or part of a knowledge organization system, as you can see. But you may have quite a number of them. Then a name authority has in the past been called an authority file. This is for named entities, concrete entities, proper nouns, names of people, names of companies, names of organizations, names of political geographic places. And it usually has preferred and variant or alternative names. It may or may not have hierarchy. Usually it doesn't. I mean, geography may have hierarchy and organizational structures may. Of course, there isn't with people. But there's often additional information. Now, this is a screenshot from our software pool party with a list of names, and SCOS, which Helmut will talk about later, the model simple knowledge organization system supports broader, narrower related concepts and some different labels and notes, but it's not rich enough for some of the additional data you want to use for names. So this next one, you can extend with a scheme. Here in this model, we've created one called business, and then you can add a lot more data for people. So this is what's often done for name authorities. It's not necessarily rich in relationships, but it is rich in data attributes. Okay, then taxonomy is a kind of knowledge organization system, a kind of controlled vocabulary that has hierarchical relationships, broader, narrower, and includes all the concepts to create a hierarchical structure. So there's focus on categorizing and organizing. As far as having synonyms or variants, that's optional. It's not a requirement of a taxonomy, but it's good practice if it's a large taxonomy that cannot easily be browsed. And it's sometimes hard to what defines a taxonomy. If you have multiple hierarchies, is each hierarchy a taxonomy? But each is kind of considered a scheme, or it could be a facet. So these are the two. There's the hierarchical taxonomy one on the left. This is from the Integrated Public Services Vocabulary of the United Kingdom. You can see there with their British sports of cricket and rugby. And the one on the right, I just invented something of, let's say, a job search. Each of those are facets: career level, function, industry, but there's still this organizing structure and grouping that characterizes a taxonomy. And it's also, you can have a combination of hierarchical and faceted. You can have little hierarchies in a facet, or you could have start with hierarchies and then limit further with facets. So here's an example of a hierarchical taxonomy as managed in our software pool party. You can see the broader and narrower. So in the tree that has the selected concept here, cakes, there has a broader concept of desserts, as you can see in the tree, and you can see listed under SCOS broader concepts, and it has several narrower concepts, as you can see in the tree, and you can see specific kinds. Okay, then a thesaurus is a kind of control vocabulary that has hierarchical relationships, but also associative, which is related term, and equivalence. Now, equivalence is functionally the same as alternative label in SCOS. It's synonyms or variants, but the traditional thesaurus model actually says these are all terms rather than concepts, and they're preferred terms and non-preferred terms, and a preferred term is used from a non-preferred term. This standard and this has been thesauri have existed since the 1960s in print, and there are standards for them. The ISO standard 25, current one, there were earlier ones too, earlier editions, 25964, thesauri and interoperability with other vocabularies, and then ANSI NISO, that's the American National Standards Institute and National Information Standards Organization. They also have a standard that's a little more needs updating. It's more out of date, and it's just for monolingual. It says controlled vocabularies, but it's really about thesauri. And thesauri are particularly used for indexing articles, research literature, and it's what libraries use. So on the subject of libraries, there's this ACES is the Association of Information Science and Technology, and so they have a thesaurus that's all about library and information science. So that's why I chose the excerpt from that one. Materials acquisition is something libraries do, but the way a selected term, they say rather than concept, from thesaurus is displayed is it has the UF means these are used for, these are its variants, like alternative labels, acquisitions, library acquisitions. And then BT is its broader term, collection development, NT are its narrower terms, and RT are its related terms. Okay. That actually to compare a thesaurus excerpt in the traditional thesaurus model and then in the SCOS model. So I had previously worked at library vendor Gale, so I took the screenshot several years ago from theirs. It's for all kinds of could be research or other magazine literature. So this one on church music, you can see again UF. It has two non-preferred terms, a broader term, religious music, several narrower terms, and several related terms. And then I repeated that in Pool Party, which uses the SCOS model, and you can see how that compares. Actually, the used fors are like alternative labels, broader term is broader concept, narrower term are narrower concepts, and related terms are related concepts. So semantically, it's the same. It's really how it's modeled that is different, and it may depend on what tool you're using. But that's just to explain. Now I think you got an idea how a thesaurus works. So moving on, ontology. I kind of skip ahead now to the most complex, semantically rich kind of knowledge organization system, and you might not even think of it as there may be questions about whether this is a knowledge organization system or something else. It actually, the way we like to talk about it as an abstract layer in describing another knowledge organization system, such as a taxonomy or thesaurus. If you want to add something now, Helmut, or should I?
Yeah, I think that's for us, the ontology is more the conceptual model that describes the relations and the types of entities that you have, and then that also gives basically, like SCOS, the structure for a knowledge organization system. I think that's quite right. Yes.
Okay, so it has relations, but they contain meaning, not just broad or narrow or related. Semantic so the word semantic means meanings. They contain meaning, and you can define what those relations are. Now they're standards, and these are from the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium. The web ontology language. Actually, it's not a standard; it's a language. It's richer than just a standard. And then Rdfs Schema. So fundamentally, it comprises classes, relations, and attributes. There's certainly more to it than that, but that's kind of the most important part. And these are arranged in triples because RDF, the Resource Description Framework, describes everything in triples. Subject, predicate, object, that's the triple, the three-part. So an example here would be, a subject, which is one concept in a Scots vocabulary, or an individual in a owl ontology, Rome, Italy, and the predicate here I have cap city, capital city of, and Italy, another individual or concept is the object. Of course, it can switch the order as well, but this kind of illustrates how the triples work in an ontology. But this diagram kind of shows the whole arrangement of classes, relations, and attributes. Okay, so classes are sets of individuals, which would be individual concepts in a taxonomy. And those here are in blue: country as a class, organization as a class, employee as a class. And then the relations here are semantic. So instead of just saying broader, narrower, related, I've defined relations as a country is home of an organization, and the inverse, the organization is headquartered in the country. And a pair of relations between organization and employee, that organization employs employee, and the inverse, employee is employed by organization.
Yes.
And then you want to say something now?
Yeah, I would just add here also, and this is also what makes the ontology more rich than taxonomy, where you just have the term and the concept and the relations, because you can name those entities like its organizations, countries, and employees. And what is also in the ontology, not to forget, is that in the ontology you can specify rules. When we see it in scope of SCOS, for example, to manage knowledge organization systems, one rule is that you can only have one preferred label per language, for example. But in other ontologies, that can be that when you have an object that's a car, that you can specify that a car has always 4 wheels. Yeah. That could also be specified in an ontology and then verified by reasoning, as it said, that if it has not 4 wheels, it's not a car, things like that. Yeah, that's what you also have basically in the ontology on top of classes, relations, and attributes.
Yes, that ability to do reasoning. Okay, so then it's still the third important component of an ontology are the attributes, which I've indicated here in green, example attributes that are associated with different classes and then with all the individuals within each class. So country could have currency and language, and you could have multiple values too. You could have more than one language for a country. An organization could have headquarters, cities. Oh, NAICS code. Oh, that was my North American bias here. I should have put down some of the European industry codes. And employee job title and email address are just examples of it. Okay, I think now I'm going to turn it over to you,
Yeah.
Helmut. Let's see.
So maybe, yeah. So because we wanted, then I.
Yeah, I'm letting you present. I'm sorry. We're going to be trading back and forth a couple of times, and
yeah, just
we'll get a little more efficient of it soon. Are there any questions at this point, though? Well, Helmut's getting started.
I do not see anything in the chat, but
I don't have any questions at this point. I'll give you a signal if I do.
Yeah, but also if you have ones, just feel free to speak up.
I will do that. Yeah.
Okay. We wanted to put it at the end also to explain a bit, because I think it's also a big topic at the moment, knowledge graphs. So not only for enterprises in general. And this also shows a bit the concept we have around it. I already tried to introduce the conceptual model, and we see then basically the cause, the taxonomy, as the more linguistic model that basically deals with language, yeah, and the translation between different people when they talk about one thing. This is where we build typically costs or taxonomies for. The ontology as a conceptual model gives us basically the structure of how our knowledge graph or our knowledge organization system looks like. And then what we should not forget, which is also part of that, it's the data itself. Because we saw before the picture of the ontology that shows us that there are organizations and countries and they are related, but then you create instances of that, like the European Union as an organization or Austria as a country, which then basically are the instances of the data. And from our point of view, those three elements, the ontology as the conceptual model, which tells us what entities do we have, what relations we have between those entities, what attributes they have, plus the rules that are below that, together with the taxonomy that helps us to describe the language in our data, and then the data itself that's pulled into the knowledge graph. Basically, those elements together are the knowledge graph or the enterprise knowledge graph as it's stated here. And we also saw the subject predicate object. Why knowledge graph? Because it's a directed graph. So on top of these semantic models that are there from W3C to build knowledge organization systems, you in fact build graphs, graph structures, which is yeah, also a big difference that brings and options that brings into the game. Heather, would you want to add something on that?
No, other than I think we forgot to mention that Helmut is also an author or co-author of the book, the Knowledge Graph Cookbook, if you'd like to learn more.
Yeah, together with Andreas Blumer. If you're interested, you can find it, and there's a free copy of it available. Yeah, and now we want to talk a bit about, some have already been mentioned, standards and recommendations. So on one hand, there are standards for design, so how should knowledge organization systems be built, and what are the principles here, like the ISO standard, but then also standards that specify how those models look like for exchange and interoperability. So I mentioned above standards and recommendations because W3C basically talks about recommendations. So they don't name it standards, but for me, it's quite similar, I would say. And so what do we have? Standards for design. There is the ISO standard. And Heather mentioned, that was always interesting for me, that the previous standards, I think they've been from the 1980s, so really before the web. And for me, it was always also, they have been built rather for taxonomies when we designed taxonomies for books, because we did not have the web, we did not have the internet, which also is organized as a huge graph, basically, as in the simplest form, pages that are connected. Yeah, and then, as you see here, in 2011, 2013, basically, came the revised standard of the, I would say, very old standards that focused on design for paper-based management, or at least from my perspective, that was the focus. And this standard then already has in it a bit this shift from also a term-based way of seeing taxonomies and knowledge organization systems to a concept-based view, and concept-based is necessary because you saw that already with the ontologies, the entities that are linked, that requires, that is not strings that are linked, that's objects, concepts that are linked with each other, and that was, from my perspective, a very important step. And then there are all those different standards for specifications and interoperability from the Dublin core, also MARC, CITES, all of that. And we also see here SCOS, RDF, Rdfs, and all, where also here SCOS basically is RDF schema. So it's based on RDF and RDFs. Yeah. And there's some all behind it to define the rules in there. So the ISO standard, of course, still costs do not have to be machine readable, but I think most of the ones we have in the meantime are designed to be machine readable and used by machines to take content in the systems that we have not typically, and make them better searchable, improve retrieval, do indexing here. First published 1974. We saw it has been revised in 2011, and then the second part, which is mostly about linking, where we also see things that Heather will show at the end of the workshop. But the SAOI, in fact, exists much longer. So, there's also a compliance cost model to the model proposed in the ISO standard. And I always see quite often that people want to adopt the ISO standards model. This is also something that I, from the practice, can say. For me, standards always try to formulate everything that can be there, yeah, but not everything that you strictly need for your use case. So starting with the ISO model to do a taxonomy is nothing I would advise, because it has things that are quite complex that you might not need. But it tells you how to deal with complex situations if you need to. And then that's also one of the great advantages of these models like SCOS, that they are extendable. So if you start with a simple model, you can extend it as you go when you have use cases for it. But in principle, it has some guidelines in it that concepts are things. It's also coming from also in SCOS. So the basic element is the concept, the unit of thought, as the saying calls in SCOS. And concepts are normally nouns or noun phrases. Concept labels should be unique. Yeah, so you should not have duplicates. That's normal. Also, relation clashes are things that you should avoid, that you have something as related and also as an error, so that you have also that you have hierarchical consistency, and that you have no circularities. Those are, I would say, basic guidelines and best practices that you have in all the standards, but in fact also the SCOS model proposes all of them. And talking about SCOS, we see COS plus S for simple, because it has been designed to have the basic elements. In contrast to the standards, for example, it doesn't differentiate between the different types of hierarchical relations, like part of, and I always cannot remember the others. And then there are different types of associative relations that you have in there. In SCOS, you have only one. You have broad and narrow, and you have related. Yeah, because again, it's a model that is built to be extended, and if you have the need to have those more detailed relations in there, you can extend it. You can build them. You can just say you have a SCOS a narrower part of, or however you want to name that, then in your extension of SCOS. Yeah. It's a common data model for sharing and linking knowledge organization systems built for the web because it comes from the World Wide Web Consortium. But we know in the meantime it has been, it's a widely adopted standard or used for taxonomies and thesauri, used in industry, even used as a standard for developing taxonomies by countries. So the Netherlands basically made it the standard countrywide for developing taxonomies, as far as I know. Yeah. It's machine readable because it's based on those semantic web standards, but it's interchangeable, so it's quite easy to transfer into and from this format. It's using XML and RDF, the resource description framework, and Rdfs Schema as a basis. And you can publish the vocabularies as linked data. There are practices for that. And of course you can, but that's a general thing. Also, I would maybe want to add on the different cost types that we had at the beginning. I'm not sure, Hedda, if you agree here or how you see that from the experience. Normally, you do not just design a cost for one of those types. It can be that the costs can be resemble different types, so you can make different types of costs from it. Yeah.
Helmut, Heather, just to remind both of you that we are at the halfway mark in the workshop and in the first workshop, and also to the viewers, if you want to send in any questions or you want to pose any questions directly, personally, into the camera, you can do that. Just so you keep that in mind, and also if anybody wants to tweet, it's hashtag endorse 2021. Please go ahead, Helmut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in that sense and in respect of time, I will just speed up a bit. So basically,
no, I think we're fine.
Yeah, we're fine in time. Yeah.
Yeah, we said we're only halfway through the first half.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's right.
That's what we meant. Yeah. Yeah.
So what are basic principles? So the basic concept is the concept. And also, like all semantic web standards, a concept is not identified by the label, which is normally traditional in these term-based systems. That the term, maybe you have a term ID, but that's normally not, yeah. And concept, so the concept is identified by the URI, and then you can group them hierarchically. This is the taxonomy that we have seen before, or the thesauri we have seen before, when they also have relations. So you can group them hierarchically in concept schemes. So the concept scheme is a container for a concept hierarchy. And then there is another container where you can group concepts, and that's collections. And collections are basically then flat lists of concepts that can be ordered or unordered. So that would be a way basically to have what we saw as facets. One way to model it, of course. Then each concept is labeled with as many lexical strings in any natural language. But you can only have one preferred label per any natural language. So and then you have quite some ways to document concepts, or different ways to do, on one hand, notes about the concepts, like scope notes or definitions or example, but then also notes about rather the governance, like editorial notes or change notes or history notes that you can do on the concepts. And then concepts are linked to each other hierarchically, and then there are these associative relations, but you also can link between different concept schemes or vocabularies, taxonomies, using those mapping relations. And here we have an overview. So again, you have the containers, the concept scheme that holds the hierarchy. Concepts are connected then by has concept is top concept of. In addition, you can specify that the concept is in a scheme that allows you also to have concepts in a scheme that are not in the hierarchy, basically. The other container is the collection, where you then can specify the members or a member list when it's ordered. And then the labels Here we also include a notation that allows to add term IDs that you might have when you move an existing vocabulary into a cost-based one. That's the typical use for it. I have not seen when you develop something in SCOS that notation is used heavily, unless you have some database numbers you want to capture in addition or things like that. And then for documentation, scope note definition and example that narrow define the concept or are intended to do that. Then on the other hand, change note and editorial note and history that says something about basically the history of the concept, how it developed, or editorial note even can be a way to exchange messages between contributors that work on the taxonomy. Semantic relations, which are broad and narrow related, and the mapping relations, where you have exact and close match here as the equivalence relation. This is here in the Aalten and Hedden label when it's on the concept directly. And then again, in parallel to broader, narrow, and related, broader match, narrower match, and related match.
I'll add another use case for notation, which is if you have a classification scheme that has alphanumeric codes for each concept, that those codes could go into a notation. That's not really something that we tend to create new anymore. That's usually existing classification systems that you want to import.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that is basically on one hand the ISO standard that gives us design principles for developing vocabularies. It also has a big chapter then for what should a tool to manage thesauri support. Quite interesting too. And then the recommendations and standards of formats to develop. And here we pointed out SCOS as what we would say the standard we have today for developing knowledge organization systems. And it's built on W3 recommendations. So we already named the resource description framework. This defines that there are things that are related, so that you have the subject, predicate, objects model as a very simple model, data model, basically, because there are even databases for that. We call them triple stores in the semantic world. And it's a standard model for data interchange on the web. This is what it has been designed for, but from our practice, we know that it got much more. It's a data standard for data interchange in enterprises and also on the governmental level. URIs are a basic principle in that basically identify the concepts, the objects, that identify the relations. So, and normally this is what's also this linked data. You can look them up. And ideally, best practice, when you look them up, you know what it is about. So then Rdfs Schema, which extends basically RDF and allows you to define simple RDF vocabularies like SCOS, but also like DC terms. It's also a RDF schema below it. And there are many others that have been published, like the geo vocabulary or FO, this friend of a friend might be known. And then even on top of that, all the web ontology language that allows us to go beyond what those normal simple schema can do and define then rules and things that allow us to basically also then do reasoning over the data that we have, making assumptions, or also build applications that take the rules into account and guide you through the development process of your vocabularies. And I think that was what was on my side. Hedden.
Yeah, now it's my turn.
Right, Heather?
Yeah. Okay. All right, so thanks. Are there any questions at this point about standards? Maybe.
I
Okay.
don't see any at this point. No, I don't. Though perhaps if anyone is watching, maybe you could give a zoom out, so what, for why this is important in the digital transformation.
Okay. Yeah, not just questions, comments are welcome as well. All right, now we'll kind of come back to, concluding here this section on overview of knowledge organization systems. There are variations of this chart showing just kind of the simpler to the more complex. And again, I mean, putting ontology on the right as if it's something separate is not quite right, but it kind of gives you the idea of, what's, termless is just to control ambiguity, but name authority has some synonym control and might have attributes. A taxonomy then also brings in the hierarchical relationships. What I have in parentheses is optional, so synonyms are optional in a taxonomy. And a thesaurus then has ambiguity control, synonym, hierarchical, and then associative relationships is something added to thesauri. And then ontologies has semantic relations instead of hierarchical or associative, but it also has classes and attributes. And there's more to that too. Yeah, being able to do reasoning as well, but this is kind of the basics. But I'd like to compare here specifically taxonomies and thesauri, because I have a background in them. And because I said, okay, thesauri, you have associative relationship. Is that all the difference is? There are more subtle differences as well if you've worked with them. Because a taxonomy brings together, I mean, all the concepts are in one or a major limited number of hierarchies or facets, where there are hierarchical relationships in a thesauri, but they are not these extensive hierarchies. So you could just have a hierarchy of two here and there, and it's okay to have concepts that don't have any broader or narrower concepts, or as they call them, terms. And there's a different approach too, that taxonomies there's a little more focus on the classification, the categorization, organization. So when you think of where have you heard the word taxonomy before, the Linnaean taxonomy of organisms, of plants and animals, that's how we, the original taxonomy. So it is classification, has that aspect to it. Whereas the thesauri, you're focusing on scoping and disambiguation relationship. For the English language, there is a kind of dictionary, Roget's Thesaurus, it's like a dictionary of synonyms. So that's another use of the word thesaurus. And if you're familiar with that, you can see how there's that relationship with information thesauri. And then standards, so the ISO and ANSI ISO standards are developed specifically for thesauri, and taxonomies do not have to quite as strictly follow it. And the best example is if you don't have the associative relationship, if you don't have related term, and two concepts or two terms you want to relate them, then you might kind of fudge or bend the rules for hierarchy in some cases. And then the approach is more kind of the top-down, drilling down, browse navigation for taxonomies, where they use for a user experience, and a user experience for thesauri is more the term-centered. I'm going to look up a term, and I'm going to see what's broader to it, what's related, what's narrow, what's it used from, and branch out from it. Taxonomies, can be used in many different ways, but one of them is to serve this end user browsing, and it's good for non-expert users who can have guidance. They start with a broad and narrow down, where thesauri they're especially good for those who do manual indexing. I can tell you from experience, that's how I got into this field, doing manual indexing, but also subject matter experts. They know what they're looking for. They don't want to spend time browsing through hierarchical trees, but then they can be guided more precisely and see also what's related. Taxonomies are better for a subject area with a defined scope, because you can't put everything into a hierarchy. It's usually, specific discipline or, specific subject area. But if you are trying to cover everything, more like news or something that's all over the place, thesauri, or, any kind of research literature, scholarly literature, where something kind of branches into other areas, it's thesauri are good. And then kind of along that, taxonomies, their size, it could be in the tens, it could be in the hundreds, maybe 1,000 or so concepts. When you get really large, again, it's kind of hard to fit everything into a neat hierarchy trees. So thesauri are very adaptable for large and constantly growing vocabulary, so they could be in the tens of thousands of terms, preferred terms in a thesaurus. Now let's see, I tried to compare.
Heather, I got a quick question.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if this is the right time to ask, but let me just tell you, maybe you can answer this now or a bit later.
Yeah, okay.
We have 15 minutes left in the workshop, by the way. This question coming in says, what is the best approach to convert terminology resources into ontologies, in parentheses, methodologies and tools?
All right, I think that will take a little longer to explain, and we'll keep that in mind.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay,
Good.
yeah, I'll pitch it to you later just to remind you.
Yeah, okay, and then Helmut might want to answer it as well.
Okay.
It was a little too hard to
Yeah,
animate, but
would be good to know a bit more about the use case.
Yeah, maybe you can correspond in the chat.
Why would you want to? Why would you want to move a taxonomy or thesaurus into an ontology? From my perspective, when it's based on scores, it's an ontology somehow already. So it would be really interesting to know more about what's the background.
Okay, hopefully the viewer is seeing and hearing that and will respond thusly.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because at this point of our workshop, the idea is like what kind of control vocabulary is suited for which situation. And so, taxonomies are for, when obviously if you can categorize hierarchically, that's great. And if it's not so easy to, maybe a thesaurus approach is better. And the scope is limited for a taxonomy, and thesaurus, it doesn't have to be. An ontology, though, although it's usually useful, there is also the aspect of a defined scope, although there are many aspects to it. The taxonomies have categories, subcategories. Thesauri are suited when you're trying to get really more specific concepts for specific indexing. And, well, I know it doesn't really make sense to compare ontology quite at this point, but it can be, it's flexible. You can go broad, you can go specific. The idea is the knowledge modeling. Taxonomies are good for non-expert users. Thesauri are good for expert users, or those who are not. And ontologies also, both expert and non-expert users. They're very adaptable. And as I said before, taxonomies maybe for smaller collections, and thesauri can be larger. And again, in the ontology, because it's the semantic layer, the actual ontology might be small, but then it's extended through a larger taxonomy. And taxonomies are suited for browsing, filtering, sorting, many uses where the focus of thesauri is a little bit more on that search and retrieval. And then ontologies bring in other interesting uses, this discovery, what's connected to what, and then you can get recommendation, and of course all the benefits of a knowledge graph that Helmut explained. Is there anything you want to add here at this point, Helmut?
No.
Okay. I just want to say that you will hear the words taxonomy, thesaurus, and ontology used in multiple ways. So sometimes taxonomy is used very broadly for any control vocabulary. Especially
maybe on that, because it was really, I remember a ISCO conference in the past where a researcher presented a study where they found that in different domains, taxonomy is used, thesaurus is used, ontology is used, and then they looked at those vocabularies and did an assessment, and the outcome was that most of them from the expressivity were taxonomies. But in one domain they named it ontology, and then it's about naming. This is also why I was asking for what's the use case for doing a taxonomy into an ontology. And yes, of course, you can transform also scores to all if you want to, but there should be a use case for that, or something that you want to do with it, or that you miss, because else it makes no sense.
So taxonomy is used pretty broadly. Thesaurus is usually used, it's sometimes more used when called a thesaurus when it has a certain use case that it's in for indexing articles or literature retrieval or librarians and indexers, etc. Although sometimes there is something I didn't really go into it, but a synonym ring, which is a search thesaurus. You're having several different synonyms for each commonly used search term. So that's like the dictionary of thesauri. So it's a rather different meaning, but you'll sometimes hear that called a thesaurus, a search thesaurus. And ontology, we've discussed what what it's understood, the ontology, it should follow OWL and Rdfs specifications, but sometimes we'll just kind of add some customization, some semantic relations if they can into a thesaurus or taxonomy. Is it then an ontology if it's not following the OWL guidelines, not according to OWL language? I don't know. Sometimes people will just call that an ontology, you added a few customized relations. All right. Okay, so uses of knowledge organization systems and benefits. Hopefully you all know this, but I kind of like to emphasize the controlled vocabulary aspect, having, controlled language and having synonyms, and that's classification or structure. So those are kind of the two aspects, and they each have benefits. And I've been kind of adding to this list of purposes and uses of controlled vocabularies, obviously consistent tagging and indexing, and then supporting the browsing through the hierarchies, supporting search by matching, the synonyms to search strings. But then when we go on, discovery, the users can find something they weren't looking for, whether this is done through related concept links or concepts sharing the same content that shares the same tagged concepts that could see what else has been tagged with this, or making use of an ontology or other methods, being able to filter results by concepts in the control vocabulary, being able to sort results. Then other uses involve workflow of content management. If you have different values for rights or audience or retention, then you can control that way. There's always this connection between control vocabularies and metadata, and the metadata we've been talking about is really descriptive, what's it about, but there's also other metadata that's more the identification, your bibliographic metadata, that's not used for searching and looking what it's about, but it's for identification, and then you can compare, and then you can do analysis and other identification. You can also do visualization, which is in depending on the tool. And that's interesting to get an overview of what's important, what the relations are. Control vocabularies also let you kind of set alerts or curate content, feeds, set up info boxes, and these can also be driven by knowledge graphs. And then, of course, then finally, the automatic linking of relevant topics for personalization and recommendation systems. So these are newer and use cases that are of growing interest. And I'm sure this list will grow some more. You have something to add, Helmut?
No,
Oh.
we just got a use case for the conversion to ontologies.
Okay. All right.
So we should
I might jump in here. We're coming up to 5 minutes away from the break. And I know you got a second part of this workshop, and I've got a number of questions already here. So let me know if there's time, we can get to the questions now, or maybe during the next workshop, but probably sooner better than later. Right?
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, actually, we did go a little slower than I thought. Let's see. Maybe I'll just go through these real quick. Just some of the benefits of the hierarchy, serving users who are browsing, instructing, providing context. And this hierarchy can also even help with auto indexing or auto classification by making use of the context and allowing the recursive or rolled up retrieval where a broader concept retrieves everything indexed with the narrower concept. And then the faceted taxonomy, and here's another example. This is like from, covered up from SharePoint or something, where you can filter and limit by. So it's a sort of guided Boolean searching, this and this and this and so forth. And it allows users to control the search and refinement. But it's not applicable to everything. The content needs to have similar types, like it's all research literature, internal policies and procedures, person profiles, media, so that they share the same kind of characteristics. And that thesaurus supports manual indexing, and this is an old screenshot from the company I worked for a longer time ago of what the manual indexer sees when they type and they see these thesaurus type relationships. See also is related term, seen from is used from. This is kind of based on Library of Congress subject headings long ago. Okay, yeah, this is, why don't we stop now for some questions, and then we can also, think about, this was sort of like a little quiz thing here, but Chris, you want to go to some questions?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Let's see. From Thomas Bach, UN Climate Change Secretariat, to everyone. If the taxonomy is based on SKOS, it is an ontology. But what if the taxonomy is not based on SKOS? Rather self-invented, that it might be interesting to see or hear about the approaches, such as to get it based on, I guess you say SKOS, right? SKOS first.
Yeah, so that was also, I think, the use case I read for how to move taxonomy to an ontology. From my perspective, when you want to have it in a graph-based model, then all RDF-based models are suitable, and you do not have to go for an ontology. You can just go for SKOS, which is a RDF schema, I would say, more than an ontology. I mean, it has an ontology below, and you can do some reasoning, but for such simple things, you don't need what I would consider to be an ontology. And the transformation the transformation into that format is normally quite straightforward. There are even tools that support that. Normally you have it in whatever systems already, where you have CITES, for example, as a format, or we know that one of the widest used, or if not the widest used taxonomy management software is still Excel. Yeah. And so many tools also provide import from Excel, where you can just import your hierarchies and by that convert them to the SKOS format. But if there is a tool with a special format, or you have it in your own built homegrown database system with whatever structure, then that would of course require a dedicated transformation process one time to move it to that format, when you plan then to also maintain it in that format, because there are in the meantime also several tools like ours that allow to manage taxonomies directly in SKOS in a graph-based format and use it from there. So
okay, I've got another question here from which it is said it is related to that first question about best approach to convert terminology resources into ontologies. This was one from Palos Marie Joe to you. Domain-specific terminologies convert into ontologies. Use case to be able to index documents based on this terminology collection, and also have the conceptual representation.
Yeah.
It's just a comment then, I guess. Any reaction to that?
Yeah, I think it there applies the same. Yeah, so of course you can develop your own ontology model. I would say the pro for SKOS is a recommendation that's used and that supports interoperability. If now everyone develops his own ontology model for a COS, then the vocabularies are not interchangeable. So when it's in SKOS, it's quite easy. Eurovoc is in SKOS. There are many vocabularies out there, and when you use the same format, as it is often, it's easier to make that interchangeable and use also parts of other systems. This is why SKOS is a good way to do that. It's concept-based, and also you can then use that format for indexing. Sorry, Hedda, that I jumped in. I think you also wanted to add something.
Yeah, I just want to clarify if it sounded confusing that SKOS is an ontology, because we were talking about SKOS as a standard of interoperability for taxonomies and thesauri and control vocabularies like that. But an ontology as the semantic model in that definition of an ontology that's high level, then SCOS actually is an ontology as well. You don't have to understand everything else about ontologies, but that's, in case that came across as what?
Yeah. Okay. All right. We will come back to you at, let's see now, 15:10 CET for this part 2 of this workshop, Building, Enhancing, and Integrating Taxonomies. Thanks very much to Heather and Helmut.
Okay.
We'll see you in a little while.
Yeah, I'm
And
going to give the answer. Yeah,
Yep.
I just want to say I'm going to leave this here, and you think about it and come back. I'll show what the suggested answers are to this one.
Okay, sounds good. And everybody stand by for the break and solution room.
Okay.
No one volunteered for the card sorting yet, so if you still send emails, you can chime in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All
See
right.
you later. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Hello, everyone. This is the break and solution room of track 2 today on ENDORSE 2021. And we are talking with Veronika Haberler. Haberler or Haberler?
Haberler.
Haberler, grüß Gott, with artificial intelligence for, with LeReTo connecting documents with knowledge in real time. And then talking to us about artificial intelligence for knowledge graphs is Dermot Doyle and Silvio Cardoso of Dynaccurate. So welcome to all of you. And I guess, Veronika, you will kick this off, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I start with sharing my screen.
By the way, if anyone has any questions, hopefully we have time, you can send them into the chat. And just to keep in mind that this is going to be recorded for future viewing, and feel free to tweet like a beast to hashtag endorse 2021. Okay. Veronika,
Okay. So welcome to my presentation, everyone. I'm really looking forward to sharing my approach for real-time digital knowledge work with you. And the project I will present today is a legal text solution for document-based research. Legal professionals have to deal with huge amounts of text and need to gather information from various sources. And an incredible amount of information is accumulated in the process of legislation and case law. So the Supreme Court of Austria alone publishes 70 new decisions every week, and federal law gazettes can reach up to 80,000 pages per year and jurisdiction. This and other information is not only scattered over 100 databases from all over Europe, but it is also eagerly cited in legal documents. So let's imagine a typical legal or business document together. And this is what such a document would look like. It is packed with citations, technical terms, and index references. So before you can even begin to work on the content, you are faced with a long Google Me list. You need to look up sources in different databases to check them and to save and download them for your electronic records. So we thought to ourselves, there must be a simpler way. We are LeReTo, and we connect documents with knowledge. And as you heard, my name is Veronika, and I will show you how to save time with our document-based search engine. First, let's see how people are researching the old-fashioned way. So the task research, especially reference research, is definitely a cumbersome job. Let me show you why that is so. We'll test popular legal databases and search engines by using the same search term with the database's quick search functions, and then compare the results. First, we search for an European Court of Justice decision using its case number. In free Austrian publisher databases, Uralex and Google. It's correct if the first or the second listed result is the desired source. For the European Court of Justice case law decisions, we would accept Curia or Uralex in Google. Everything else is not valid in our test run. So let's see what happens if we search. So the result is a bit of a surprise, I would say, as every European Court of Justice decision is published in Uralex. But what if we use the European case law identifier instead of the case number in the quick search function of Uralex? So now Uralex finds the wanted source this time, but months does no longer. Next, we are switching from Uralex to a national Austrian database, namely the Rechtsinformationsservice, and we will search for an Austrian Supreme Court decision. Supreme Court decisions are, under statutory law, published in the official Austrian legal database, as I told you. So we expect we will use the case number again. The way it is shown here is the correct citation style and the common citation style as well. So let's have a look, and the result is not what we were hoping for. So let's give it another try by eliminating the spaces in our search term this time, and now it works with RIS, but we have lost months and also Google. So the case number is a problematic search term for some search engines if you just use the quick search functions. So to sum it up, you need lots of prior knowledge when doing research, and you need domain knowledge regarding the European case law identifier, the case number types, and which databases is trustworthy. And you will need research knowledge of the respective databases, the search functions, the logic behind it, and how it works in general. So Google is a popular search engine, and looking at the results, we can all tell why that is so. So Google performs best in our little search engine test run here. And so now how can we help researchers with that? We make research smart by enriching PDFs with knowledge and database links in real time. And this is how it works. We just drop a document into our online tools and get back a smart PDF with database links and knowledge tooltips for our electronic record. And we can, of course, connect and integrate our technology with existing internal knowledge management systems or publication platforms via APIs. Access information and knowledge from any PDF with just one click. This way, you have all the relevant information at your fingertips. By clicking a reference, you can open the cited source in the right database, may it be EU or national case law, statutory laws or treaties, or other sources. And these other sources could be, for example, legal literature, business dictionaries, governmental enactments, company and IP registers, and the like. And our tooltips even incorporate expert knowledge directly into your documents. So we preserve the original PDF and document look and layout, but we add additional layers containing interactive functions like bookmarks and links. There are so many things people can do with data and documents to get new insights or to speed up their daily work. An existing document is often the starting point for numerous workflows and analytic processes. And therefore, we focus exactly on that, the written document in any format for multiple use cases, may it be access to knowledge, data extraction, document clustering, or visualization.
Veronika, just to remind you, I think we're 2 minutes away from half time.
Oh,
If, I don't know
I'm
how- I
nearly
guess
there.
You're splitting your time with the others. Okay.
Okay, I speed
Please,
up.
go.
So we are not only engaged in legal tech and knowledge management, but we bring innovation also to the fields of e-learning and e-publishing. And besides that, we even powered the first legal tech hardware and augmented reality solution with our technology. As you can see here, we feed our tool with some legal citations printed on paper on the left side, wait for the real-time analysis to do the recognition magic, et voila. We display the found database entries on the right side, namely section 112 of the Code of Civil Procedure within the Austrian official legal database. So
That's magic to me, but yeah.
That's great. That was just an experimental and playful setup we did just for fun for the Berlin Legal Tech conference in 2019. And the hardware setup included a 4K camera and a projector you see here, both connected to a mini PC with internet access. So what you see here is not a staged mock-up, but a real-time and live analysis with our technology. But in general, of course, we work more on screen with digital files in a more serious context. So first select a PDF and start the real-time analysis via your browser. Read your file in our online viewer assisted by knowledge tooltips and the citation markers. And then in the end, you can check out with a smart PDF with web links or other to public or other content databases. I think we will open here the RIS again. So back to my final slide. Our database contains over 8 million entries with economic and legal expertise, which we can match with documents within seconds. We link to 100 specialized and trustworthy databases from all over Europe, including national legal databases and public registers, as well as Eurolex. And through curated content, we increase the quality and ensure easy access to open knowledge. And since we're based on the popular but technically difficult to handle PDF format, our users can work intuitively without media breaks. Our tools are based.
Great. Veronika, I'm sorry, I got a quick question for you, very quickly. Could LeReTo be used for other types of PDF documents than legal documents? Could the scope be expanded to other areas?
Yes, of course. So it's we come from the legal background, but we are not narrowed to it. So you can use it for any domain you would like to use it.
Okay, excellent, great. Veronika, I'll have another question for you if I have time later, but let's please, so stand by. And at this point, we're going to shift over to, let's see, we're coming up to Artificial Intelligence for Knowledge Graphs with Silvio Cardoso and Dermot Doyle. Silvio, Dermot, please.
Thank you very much, Chris. Unfortunately, I'm just going to begin sharing the slides. Unfortunately, I'm not
yes, just give me a second.
By Silvio today. No problem.
You're flying solo.
Yeah, I'm flying solo. So I'll try and share my slide deck. I think I have that now. And I also have to optimize, I think, for some video, as we have some video.
You're with the company Dynaccurate, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
So let me just get that up. Just maybe on support, if you could tell me, where again do I find my link for Optimize for Video?
I'm not the one to tell you, but perhaps Leo could tell you.
Support is on mute.
Yeah. Sorry, Dermot?
Yeah, I just want to optimize for
presentation.
Yeah, optimize for video.
Yes, so when you click share.
Yep.
And then at the top there is.
Okay. I have that. Thank you for that reminder. Okay, so let's go to share and straight in. Okay, so sadly not joined by Dr. Cardoso today. I'll get straight into the background Dr. Cardoso developed Dynaccurate along with the team at LIST, which is Dr. Cedric Pruski and Dr. Marcos de Silveira. Cedric is here today. Big shout out to him. Also a shout out to LIST as an institution and the Luxembourg National Research Fund, the FNR, who funded actually all of this technology, I understand, to the tune of over €1 million. So what's our problem space? The problem space is semantic interoperability. And as people who are working with knowledge graphs know that you may be relying on control vocabularies or terminologies. And this is not a big problem if the ontology is relatively small, or you can manage the CV, or if the domain doesn't have a huge amount of change or evolution in it. However, if the domain is in the life sciences sector or in medicine, where you have a lot of knowledge, for example, in the last year, we saw a huge amount of peer-reviewed papers come out on COVID. You have an explosion of knowledge, an explosion of understanding, and as we learn things and we grow in knowledge, we categorize things, we term things, and of course the control vocabularies and terminologies also expand. And they evolve, in fact, because what will occur is things will go out of date as well as come into force. So I'm going to have a look now at a clinical terminology. And in this case, on the left-hand side, you see MEDRA and SNOMED. And you can imagine two administrators, for example, perhaps clinical coders, working in two hospitals. On the left-hand side, they're using MEDRA. On the right-hand side, you see SNOMED CT. The phrase thoracic pain is used in MEDRA, SNOMED, it's CT. Or SNOMED CT, it's chest pain, and they're mapped. Now, what happens when this evolves? And bear in mind that SNOMED has something like 360,000 concepts, and they're releasing more every 6 months. And the last release was something like 3,500. So this evolution, it's real, it's ongoing, and it impacts all the time, okay? And that's only one clinical terminology. We had one end user who was working with something like 3 different terminologies, and he had to update every month, and he told us he just could not do it. That's how serious his problem was. So if you look at the situation on the the right-hand side, you will see that the phrase chest pain has been made redundant, and it's now pain of truncal structure, which is even difficult for a native speaker to say. But you still have to retain the link to chest pain, because otherwise that historical, let's say, patient record, you need to have semantic interoperability, not just for the terms which are live, but for everything which has been there historically as well. So this is quite a live and serious issue in the healthcare sector. And in the healthcare sector, it's recognized that this is one of their major challenges. So I have a little video explainer here, which I hope will work. That's it in a nutshell, really. That's the video explainer which we created to communicate that wider issue. So look at the impacted sectors, life sciences, which we've touched on, certainly also public administration from the IGOs, the European Union, the UN being clear bodies there, Eurovoc being issued by the EU. They also have other vocabularies as well. Agrovoc issued by the United Nations. ICD is one of the clinical terminologies that comes from the WHO. In the legal sector, there's control vocabularies which continue to evolve and change. Recently, there was a European agency which issued new terminology for gender and social matters. And this is something which is growing in importance, growing in knowledge. And this is also something where you would expect a degree of equivalence between the member states. Because you want to have a common framework of rights. But you still have to express that in a national language, national legislation for a country. And defense and security is one which wasn't necessarily obvious to us in the first instance, but if you look at the NATO alliance, many different countries, many different languages, but they also have to have interoperability, and not just technically in how they cooperate together, but also in how they communicate. And this is also growing there. So you can see huge amount of domains which are impacted by evolution in control vocabularies and terminologies. So here's a little bit on the tool performance. It's a pity that that Silvio is not here today because this is his baby. But what we can say immediately around SNOMED, MESH, and ICD is that Dynaccurate for these is 90% and above accuracy in remapping those terms. So it's incredibly powerful. It removes a huge amount of manual labor out of the process. We know of one organization, and they have some, I think they told us something like 3 years of SNOMED CT changes have backed up, and they're looking forward to using our tool in that regard. So tool performance again, this is an interesting thing that happened during the course of the project. There was a component called conto-diff. Now, I hope everybody can read the screen, but on the left-hand side, you see average execution time in seconds. And on the bottom of the screen, at the bottom of the graph, I would say, average total changes, and these are in the 100,000s. So what Silvio achieved with the Dynaccurate algorithm was actually, I think, from a scientific perspective, was really quite impactful because he developed a very elegant approach. And this particular conto-diff, I believe this was changed by another member of the team. I believe it was Marcus who brought in the new on DynDiff. This is much more optimal. And you can see that orange line there has a much flatter curve. So it's very, very performance efficient. So how are we developing Dynaccurate AI as a tool to go out so it can be used practically? Well, we wanted to offer something for end users in administration and health. So what we did is we paired the AI with Vocbench, which is available from ISA Squared. And this was great because we were able to reuse the technology, which is open source from the ISA program. It's commonly used in the European Commission. And what we've done is we've put in a new GUI on top of that, and that's going to be released soon. And that will be a web interface. So you'll have all the ontology editor functions with the API in a nice, smart-looking, what we hope is a nice, smart-looking GUI. And then we also will have develop a plugin directly for Vocbench. And we may also try to integrate the API with a spreadsheet, which might sound a little bit backward or Stone Age, but remember, spreadsheets are ubiquitous. Everybody uses them. And you don't necessarily, we're trying to get to administrators who want maybe up-to-date codes, maybe not necessarily people who need to full ontological editing functions. So now I'm going to try another sneak preview. This is very quick. This was developed, oh, my mistake. A sneak preview of the web interface. You will see some different images of the human body, and this is because it's for a health agency. And the idea is that they will be able to click on the human body and find codes that way. We may not go with that function at the end, but this is the GUI that we will expect to be releasing online. And that's it. I hope that was interesting for everybody. Chris, how did I do on time? Do we have time for questions?
Yes, we do. Let's see here. I got one for you, Dermot. Hold on.
Okay.
Let's see. How does Dynaccurate AI help to alleviate the problems caused by constant changes in controlled vocabularies?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's exactly its function. So what happens is it automatically remaps. So if you have a mapping in place, let's say between ICD and SNOMED, for example, which is a fairly common one, what will occur is that once you have that mapping in place and Dynaccurate takes in the new releases of those, it will remap for you automatically. And when I touched on accuracy earlier, it was above 90%. So you still have the human in the loop, and you can still validate that the mappings which Dynaccurate is proposing. And there will be that small single-digit percentage which requires human intervention anyway. So you're taking out 90% of the labor, in fact.
Okay, all right. And let me see here. Let's see here. One for Veronika before we wrap up. Could LeReTo be used for other type? Oh, no, we already had that. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, let's see. I think that's all I've got. If there's any closing comments in the next 1.5 minutes by either of you.
Oh, feel free to get in touch, yes, and happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yes, to you too. To you too,
What he
Dermot.
said.
No, it's interesting, and on the healthcare side, because I know how much healthcare is shifting toward digital.
Absolutely, absolutely.
With barcodes and QR codes and trying to put it all together, and this is obviously all part of that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And when you have it all integrated like that, you can avoid mishaps too, right? You can avoid people getting the wrong medication or things like that.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a bit worrying to hear one individual tell us that he was responsible for a drug catalog, and he told us, I can't manage all of this, and it wasn't his fault. He needed support. He needed an AI to help him in that task, and that's the way it's going to go into the future, where we need AI as tools, because our explosion of knowledge in medicine is absolutely massive. And it's too much to expect individual administrators to handle all of that alone.
Especially in this time of COVID crisis, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, we need all the help we can get digitally.
Absolutely.
Okay, Dermot, Veronika, thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very enlightening. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye to you. And let us move on back to the workshop. Starting now on building, enhancing, and integrating taxonomies, part 2 of the workshop with Heather Hedden and Helmut Nagy. We'll see you there in just a couple of moments. Stand by. Let me see now. Shall we begin? Yes, we can. Okay. Heather and Helmut, please go ahead and continue with part 2 of this workshop.
Okay, I guess I need just to share. It's not. I'm sorry, I'm clicking on share and it's not working.
Oh. Okay, Leo, can you help at all on control room side?
Okay, we will unshare the screen and then you can try it again, Heather. Okay, Heather, click on share again.
Oh, it's not working.
Should I take the screen, and just because on my side it seems to work?
Oh,
And you tell me when to move on.
I don't know what the red X does. Was that?
The red X kicks you out of the meeting.
Yeah, see, I clicked it, but I didn't leave the meeting. Maybe that's what happened.
Ah, okay.
Oh, yeah, please don't click on it.
Okay.
Okay, then I will just move
Okay.
forward there, Heather.
Okay.
I think this is where we left
Yeah,
off.
yeah,
You
that was the
just
one.
Tell me when I should move on.
Okay. Let's see. Get it bigger. Good. All right. So if you during the break you had some time to think about these. So for an enterprise intranet search, a faceted taxonomy is what's usually used. For a government agency or public website, hierarchy is good because you have new one-time, first-time visitors to such a site. So it kind of helps guide them for what they, not just navigation, but for topics and subjects. A digital asset management system, that would include image files or other assets. It's very common to use a faceted taxonomy for the different aspects of what's depicted, who is in it, when, what occasion, and other topics and subjects and objects in the images. A repository of published research articles. I hope you got the idea that a thesaurus is good for that because there's a lot of detailed information, and research isn't really necessarily confined to one hierarchical area. Maybe a name authority also based on other information. And then finally, a database of researchers and their projects. Now here we're trying to do something more complex, connecting people to projects based on topics. So then an ontology would be recommended, but this is on top of a thesaurus and definitely a name authority for the names of the researchers. Okay, so the next slide. So now we've talked about these different combinations of knowledge organization systems and combinations of types. Wait, was a slide back before this? So an organization may use multiple knowledge organization types, even for a single domain of content. So in ontologies, as we've seen, that is kind of being an overlayer of different kinds. And so then you would combine an ontology. So by their natures, it would combine with other specific vocabularies, such as term lists, name entities, taxonomies, and thesauri, and you create customized relations between them. So this table down here shows that if you might have originally different knowledge organization a system or a scheme, a concept scheme for laws and legislative bodies, and then you create a semantic relationship, and here it shows the inverse too. So you have a name authority of laws, you have a name authority of legislative bodies, and then you relate them with a semantic relationship of issued by and diverse issues. And then you have another one of thesaurus subjects, and then you relate the laws to the thesaurus subjects. For example, a relation deals with, the law deals with a subject, and the thesaurus subject is the subject of a law. So that's where, after you've created your thesaurus, after you have your name authority, then you're linking them with these semantic relationships, and that's kind of your step towards an ontology. Okay. And anytime you want to comment on something, Helmut, you can. But so like I said, in SCOS, these do not need to be separate knowledge organization systems. They would rather be separate concept schemes, a concept scheme for law, a concept scheme for legislative body, a concept scheme for subject. Okay, next slide. So I think, remember, I showed you this table before of complexity, but then click the next one. Next slide. The ontology is really a layer on top. That's how we prefer to model it. I mean, there are dedicated ontology tools like the Protégé, maybe you've heard of, where you build everything, the whole ontology with all the specific instances extend down, but the bottom-up approach is actually better. You have your term list, you've already been gathering your names, you've been gathering taxonomies and thesauri, and then you build the ontology on top. And so actually, what is the ontology, just a layer on top, or is it the ontology plus what's below are different definitions of ontologies? Okay, next. All right, so this is also kind of a little quiz type question for you to think of. What kind of knowledge organization system is best for different kinds of vocabularies or concepts? Now, a few of you might recognize this very long list of vocabularies because it does come from the publishing office of the EU. I was surprised that there's so many. And what some of these might be. So I put in a few kind of generic ones. Okay, there could be activities, languages, subjects, of course, document types, countries, laws, organizations, events. Okay, next slide. Or again, wait, go back. There. What? Yeah, it's sort of an animation. Go back one slide.
Ah, sorry.
There.
Now we have it, sorry.
Yeah, now we had, yeah, because I wanted to think about it a little bit. Okay, so subjects would be a thesaurus or taxonomy, and activities could be a term list or active or taxonomy, depending on how many they are. If it's a short list, it's a list. And if it gets extensive, it could be in a hierarchy. Languages would be a term list. Now, it's true, if you're a linguist, you know that there is a linguistic hierarchy of families of languages. True, but for most of our purposes, we're not trying to classify languages into hierarchies. So that is not user-friendly. A term list is the way most often it should be, which actually does bring up the point. It may depend on the use case. Document types, and this is very common to have some kind of document type. And I've seen them go, sometimes they're short lists, sometimes they're more extensive and in a hierarchical taxonomy. And it's not obvious. You do need to consider that. Countries, now this could be a term list or a name authority. And again, I wouldn't necessarily put it into a hierarchical taxonomy of continent and region necessarily. It's not usually needed. It depends on, do you want to have additional attributes or metadata on the countries? Then it evolves from a simple term list to a name authority where you start putting in additional data about them, such as I said, it could be currency or time zone or languages or other data, even statistical data such as population. Laws would lend themselves to a name authority because they are named entities, but you want additional data on them. Organizations, also events as well. And if you have disagreements or comments, you can put them in the chat. But in the meantime, we'll move on. The next slide, which is actually, that's finally came to, now we're in part 2, a little behind. So building and enhancing. Now we kind of got, understanding what they are and how they relate. So a knowledge organization system connects users to content. So when you build one or enhance one, you have to consider the user's needs for input and consider what are the terms from the content. And we'll look at that now in the next slide. For the next, okay. So methods, so looking at input from users. They're different methods, and I've had experience with these from before because I've been a consultant, especially doing a brainstorming workshop or interviews or card sorting or search logs. Then let's look at the next details. So a brainstorming workshop is for designing a vocabulary in facets and gathering initial concepts, and that's also card sorting could be done that way. Interviewing stakeholders, I've done a lot, and that's also for both building or enhancing a knowledge organization system. Search logs is more of an indirect way of getting input from users, what they've been entering into a search log, and it's a good way to also get alternative labels as well. Okay, next. We'll look at these in a little more detail. So interviewing stakeholders, what does that mean? So who are the users of the taxonomy? And they could be those who are doing manual tagging. They could be those who are using it for search and retrieval. And they could be using, different functional areas. And talk to these people, person by phone. I might send a list of questions in advance. There could be more than one person at the same time if they do the same function. And the questions would deal with how they find and discover information, and what the pain points are, what would they, if they could have some terms, what would they be, what are their difficulties, and these are a good way to get information. Those who curate content and questions and decisions and issues for tagging as well. I said from both sides, from the information users and from the information curators or taggers. Okay, next. Actually, this is now where I'm going to turn it over to Helmut. He's going to talk a little bit about card sorting, and we'll demo.
Yeah, so we will demo together. We've unfortunately no volunteers, so we'll try, but please open the mic then and maybe just add in things. So card sorting is a common methodology, I would say, to also do a expert-based design of a taxonomy where you in a physical one sit together and people write things they think should go into the taxonomy on cards, and then together or in groups you sort the cards, you build hierarchies that way, and try to organize them. But there are, in the meantime, and this is what we want to show, there's software available. Since those physical things are not possible at the moment, that's getting more important, as we know, over the last year. So we will try to show how that could look like. And of course, you need then also, again, multiple stakeholders, subject matter experts that should contribute to that one. Basically, you have two types, an open sort. So this is one where you basically start from zero and just gather the first structure and categories. It's at the beginning of the taxonomy development process. And then the closed one, this is to basically review. So you have an existing taxonomy, you print out the cards, and then you, in the workshop, try in the card sorting to group them again. In the middle, somehow, is the semi-closed, was the name I heard. Maybe you have heard others. That means that it's not closed, really means strictly you have 1,000 concepts, you work with 1,000 cards, it's not allowed to extend. When it's semi-closed, you work with the 1,000 cards and you are allowed to add others. 1,000 is maybe a bit much for such an adventure, but those are basically the types of card sorting you can do. We will do now an open one. This is what the tool allows to do. So I switch over. Also, just to show that this is then also connected to a taxonomy management system. So what you do in the card sorting can directly be added then into your taxonomy. So at the moment you see it's empty. And we choose as a topic, we want to build a taxonomy around tourism. So for a tourism office that wants to basically help the customers to find interesting spots and places to go, where they then can select things, and then you can make suggestions for a possible tour, or they can search for interesting things in countries they want to go to. So that's the overall topic, I would say. And we have in here now me and Heather, but as said, also just use the chat to throw in things that you would think should go into the taxonomy. I think Heather and I will just give it a go, right? And now in the first phase, we'll collect some cards. So I would say I start here. We need sites that we want to go to.
Already added something.
And we need countries, and then also towns we want to visit, and sites, Eiffel Tower, for example, and then, oh, I mistyped it, I think, and then this is in Paris, and also, since I'm from Vienna, there's the Stephansdom, St. Stephen's Church, I should say. Exactly, and maybe one or two more we can think of. Yeah, but I think you see the principle. You just can put cards in here. So maybe let's also zoom a bit out that we see more of it. Oh, it's too much. And then in the next phase, you can start and discuss and start also to group things. So I would say sites can be then museums, right, Heather? We can extend that. And we think that both of those are important, so we can vote on them to say also what's relevant.
Okay, I'll stop adding any. We didn't practice this.
No, that's free.
Yeah.
Freestyle.
Yeah.
I would say historic churches also is below sites.
Yeah.
And then we have art museums, which are also below museums. Would be my reasoning, right?
Yep.
And then we have St. Stephen's Church as a historic church. And Paris as a town, and also Vienna is a town here. For that one, river cruise, for me, it doesn't fit neither into sites or countries. So it's rather something where we need something like activities. Or what would you say, Hedden?
Yeah, activities.
Yeah, so let's put in activities and then have beach
So what's
cruises.
interesting is that you can go bottom up and top down, because we weren't, sometimes you think, okay, you're going to start with activities and cities and sites, but this way you can kind of just brainstorm ideas and then you group them and you come up with what that's the beauty of a open card sort.
And you can add notes on it also, like people put in synonyms to say this is a synonym for we don't have one yet. So that's more hypothetic. Yeah. I just put the Eiffel Tower here. We have no category for sites for Eiffel Tower, but I think it's valid. So, and that's basically what you can do in this brainstorming phase. You just add in cards, you can vote on them, you can comment on them, you can group them to pile them up, and then basically you can accept them. So I would now, maybe Heather, we do it together to make it faster.
Oh yeah, I just checked them. All right, so I just put checks on everything that I...
Exactly, and then I think we can go also already to our to the next phase, where we can also here already start to structure it. Yeah. And from what I hope that's, yeah. And now with accepting that, yeah, we already basically made all of what we added now suggestions that the taxonomist here could really work from here. But also you can continue in the card sorting, in the structure phase, where we now can say, okay, we want to start the structure here in a maybe more visible way. So, and that would mean that we now can say, okay, we have on level 1 activity sites and activities and countries. And then we can also move in river cruises narrow to activities. And for countries, we have towns and Paris and Vienna. And then here we have historic churches, and below that St. Stephen's. And then we have castles and beaches. Oh, that was wrong.
Speaking of which, Helmut, I got a question here. Beaches, the question is, beaches go under sites and activities. How to deal with that?
That would be a discussion in the card sorting, because I would say, from my perspective, beaches is not an activity. And then this is something, of course, in the card sorting phase that you have to negotiate also to come to an agreement. Yeah.
Right.
I think the tool now would not allow for that polyhierarchies. to have it in two places, but this is something, of course, where then in the end can say, and this is what I will show now. So when we go back, we see now we have it here also. Let me just reload the project. We have it now here in the tree. And of course we can now, so beaches anyway should go, sorry for that, should go out here and not be an error of castles. That's definitely true. But then also here I could say I want to also have beaches below activities when I did that or wanted that. Yeah, but I just wanted to show now basically from here, yeah, that we get everything basically already in the taxonomy management system, and then can continue our work here also based on a basic structure that we developed together in this card sorting session. And in fact, I can also revisit that and add more here. Are there any other questions?
Not at the moment, but I'll let you know.
Heather, from your side, anything to add that you wanted to?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so this is, I think, one way to get started, yeah, to collaboratively in a group, work on the basic structure. Also here you see you can do that remote, some people together, you can work on it, communicate over it, sort out if beaches are sites or activities, vote on things if they're important or not important. So that already allows a lot that you can do to get to a basic structure for your taxonomy. And I basically go back to our presentation and hand over to Heather.
Yeah, okay, I think I can share now. I don't know why I couldn't before.
Super.
That was kind of tedious. But here, this is where we should be, right?
Yes.
Because we just finished the card sorting. Okay, so that was focusing on user input to develop and or enhance the taxonomy. And the other side of it is looking at the content to enhance the taxonomy. So actually, I'm going to turn it back over to you pretty soon, Helmut. So too, there's manual and automated to look at content. I would recommend manual kind of at the high level. You know, it's even if you have an automated way, which we'll show you, it's good to kind of still manually skim, look at sample content to know what it's about. And just a representative sample of different kinds of content. Whereas automatic, you can extract from a much larger corpus of documents. You can get a bit more detailed as well. So for manually, they just have to look at all the different kinds of content that will be tagged by the taxonomy, what it'll be used for. And it's a kind of content audit or inventory. Well, this isn't exactly extracting, but sort of. And, you know, and you would list them maybe in a spreadsheet and look at concepts in the documents, especially in the titles and section headings. If they're web pages, you look at that navigation meta, and if there's any existing metadata. And if you know anything about, you know, indexing, it's like you imagine you're a manual indexer and what would you tag this document with? The concepts don't exist yet, but you're considering them and what would be used. So I wanted to show, let's see, like one, okay, wait. Example of a document here. This was an article that from a news article, sort of unrelated of tourism, but what's going on right now, published last week. Coronavirus, Europe in vaccine race to save summer. And what would be, you know, if actually, I'm sorry, I should have put this in to, you know, share this in the chat, but, you know, if we look at it with what the concepts are, there's some that get kind of detailed, but I mean, if anyone wants to put some suggestions into the chat of what it's about. I can do this. Oops. I have to figure out how to get back into the chat if I'm presenting. Is there a way I can do that? Okay, I'm going to stop. So I didn't practice this,
I made
but
a suggestion.
yeah. Oh, you may, let's see. How about, that's good. I'm just going to scroll down a little further. I'm sorry, you can't kind of scroll it. Or I didn't plan ahead about putting this in the link in the chat, which is what I should have done. And that's.
I have a question here
Okay.
for you, Heather.
Yeah.
If you can hear me.
Yeah.
From Mary Jo Palos to everyone. For the automatic concept extraction, is the tool based on purely statistical methods, or does it have linguistic engineering too, such as AI?
We're going to get to that in just a minute. So let me go back to the, anyway, the concepts that would be here, let's see, while I'm presenting, I don't see the chat. That's the problem. But it would be, of course, coronavirus or COVID-19 vaccine, whatever the preferred choice would be. Summer holidays.
Thomas Barr of climate change says, UN climate change says pandemic.
Yeah, that would actually be kind of broad. I think we might do something narrower even. COVID-19 campaign. And another one that I found interesting here, so you get kind of specific, is this concept of vaccine passport. I found that was actually interesting. But one thing that would very
much a hot topic right now, of course.
Yeah, but the word here in this heading, it's not about discrimination. I mean, there was this idea, we could discriminate people who didn't have it, but it's not that. This should not be a topic. Discrimination should not be. Vaccine rollout might be something like that. We're going to say COVID-19 vaccine distribution maybe would be a better one, and definitely tourism industry. So tourism industry, Europe, COVID-19 vaccine and vaccine passport would be some of them that I would think for this. So let me go back now to the presentation. But that's the idea of looking at it manually. Actually, it is at this point it's Helmut's turn to present, because he's going to talk about doing it automatically.
Mm-hmm. So then just give me a moment. Share again. And yes, so that was basically, of course, starting manually from the documents, but as I said, or as it was also asked already in the channel, another method, of course, is that you do an, I would say, empirical approach, extract concepts automatically from your content objects that can be documents or whatever you have by automatic text extraction. Also trying to answer the question. I think in extraction, you always lose somehow linguistic methods, because things like plural, singular, or other things you take into account in that process. AI, it's always a bit also big for me. So in that, when the extraction is knowledge model or knowledge organization system based, there is, I wouldn't say AI, there's no machine learning involved, but on the other hand, knowledge models are good input for machine learning tools as gold standards to build better models. So, and since the question was about the tool, and I assume it's about our tools, we support both, and you can combine the approaches. But what is used now for this empirical approach to extend the taxonomy, that is based on extracting terms and concepts to find new concepts and synonyms to feed into the taxonomy. So that's a statistical approach that also includes some linguistics, I would say. You can also evaluate the existing taxonomy. We calculate co-occurrences, which is a bit AI, maybe some would say no, it is not. And that also allows to suggest relations. And also that's important for us because the corpus is not only to extend the taxonomy, you can also design the corpus as a statistical model of the language in your content and use that then to improve the extraction results to get better scoring. Yeah, and that's now, I would say, the next step. What I want to do is to show that we've prepared something. So here we have thesaurus. It has associative relations, so it's not a taxonomy that we developed. It's also published on our server for the semantic web. You see it has different concept schemes in it. And what I did is I uploaded a bunch of, how many were it? Documents, it's bigger ones. By that, it's not that many, but still we get quite a lot of term suggestions that we find. So here we have some statistics. We have 400,000 terms extracted. The occurrences are, of course, more because that's how that's unique. That's in total. And then the first thing that we already can see is here we have what are the concepts in our taxonomy that most often are picked up in that list of documents, and what's also the label that's most often picked up. So it's artificial intelligence, but the most found label is AI. Yeah, and here you see technologies is what we have as a preferred label, but technology is what is found. Yeah. And then you can also, of course, have a look at what is not found, and that can give you signals about things that are in your taxonomy, but obviously not in the documents that you want to search with your taxonomy. So concepts that you, from that perspective, will not use. You see here, it's mainly names of organizations and names of individual people and things like other organizations, which you anyway do not want to have extracted at all. So you can blacklist it and then it's excluded next time. And also, of course, here now we could see things are not found because we used the wrong wording. Yeah. And then we also could see if in the terms that we find there is something similar, yeah, that we add as an alternative label, and then it's found next time. That's one thing that you can do here. And then most relevant, of course, is that you get quite a list of terms that you can look by different relevancy. So this is those are two algorithms to calculate relevancy. This one focuses on one phrase word, so it's quite similar to the one we had before. That one, I think it's the mutual information score. As you see, it focuses more relevancy on things that have been found that have multiple not terms, multiple phrases, and then you can simply from here pick things like what would be something, information capabilities framework, and add them as new candidates that you want to include in your taxonomy. Yeah, so that's the purpose of that one, that you identify basically new things. It has also one thing that you can do is that you also try to look up the terms when you don't know what it is, like MDM. So from what I know now, I would say, what might that be? Yeah, it's an abbreviation, can also have multiple meanings. And then we can look it up in different sentences where it has been found, and we now know that's about master data management. And then master data management is definitely relevant, but also we have the taxonomy here. So I will now look for master data management, and I see that's already something we have in our taxonomy, but obviously we have MDM not as a synonym in. And here you see we get suggestions, and I can just drag that in here also to have it as a new synonym. But the things that are suggested here, so, and that's this co-occurrency I talked about before. These are things that are suggested because they often co-occur in the context of master data management in the documents that we uploaded here. So master data would be broader than, yeah, or related. So you can think that can be again become terms that you might want to include, yeah. So now we have master data as another candidate concept here, and metadata. What would be another one? I cannot find really something here that makes sense. Let's see if we have another one where we have more. No. Yeah, but I think basically the principle is clear. And then also here you wouldn't just, here you get then suggestions of concepts that already exist, or you can pick something here. I just put it now on the Information Capabilities Framework. Where could it fit under? Is anyone a suggestion? Yeah, I would just say, let's put it here. And then now it has a green tick here that says we can include it in the taxonomy because it's connected to it in some place, and by that make the candidate the concept, and improve the taxonomy. And we also can build hierarchies here. So that's how, or different functionalities that you can do in such a corpus management to improve the taxonomies that are implemented here in our application. Yeah. Are there any questions so far related to that?
I don't see any at this point. You can continue. We have another a little bit less than 20 minutes left.
Yes.
Okay, that should work.
Then I give it back to Heather, right?
Yeah. Okay. Oops. Yeah, so we are at part 3, which is a smaller part, and integrating taxonomies. And this was actually, I had presented a presentation on this at the Semantics Karlsruhe conference in 2019, and those slides are available too that I'll share if we don't have time to go into as much detail. But backing it up, the idea is reusing and extending taxonomies and the broader level. That is also something that you should consider. And then more specifically, linking and mapping. A mapping is a subtype of linking. So linking is where you have two distinct taxonomies or other knowledge organization systems or control vocabularies that you want to keep as distinct, as opposed to merging them, which is the third one. But you want to combine them to extend them so you can use one for the other or another way. So mapping is where it's actually a one-to-one equivalence relationship. And in SCOS, as Helmut showed before, does have these relationships, the exact match or close match. Or you could use other matches for linking rather than mapping. So you're not using one for the other, but you're actually extending one control vocabulary into another. But if you're mapping, then it's kind of one is the front end that is in the user interface, and the other is the back end that's tagged to the content. Merging is where you are combining two taxonomies permanently and you're removing duplicates, and you no longer have them retained as distinct because there's no need for that. But the first step is still, for merging, the first step is still linking. And then you incorporate, add in unlinked concepts if they're justified. So that all comes under the bigger umbrella of linking. So if they're linking, especially when, again, I'm emphasizing the difference between matching and merging. Direction is important. That's why I have these little arrows here. So we're directional linking or mapping from one knowledge organization system to another. That's what's done in mapping. You have to be very careful about the direction. And also merging. You're merging one into another. You know, you still have one you have to designate one taxonomy or knowledge organization system as kind of the primary, and the other one's going to merge in and some of it will disappear. Now, bidirectional with equivalent links is so that content can be shared, and bidirectional with the associative or hierarchical, that's kind of extending. You're not using one for the other, but you're kind of bringing in together without merging them, without, you know, still being able to use them as distinct if you wanted to, but also using them to have a larger taxonomy. So SCOS has standards for linking, and there's, you know, which we've seen already, the exact match, close match, broad match, narrow and related. And here I've explained which, you know, if it's bidirectional, exact, it's exact in both directions, close is both directions, but broad, narrow, and related are in one direction, and then they have an inverse. And you can read more about that. Now, they're also, the ISO standard, it's thesauri and interoperability with other vocabularies. It's that part 2, interoperability with other vocabularies, that also addresses linking in a different way. It's not talking about the you know, the same way, but it's a little more theoretical about mappings, and really goes into the depth of this directional and, multi-directional. It's not just 2. We might want to map 3 or multiple vocabularies and how you do it. So I strongly encourage you to read this standard if you are going to embark on a project of combining and linking and vocabularies. And it's only in the ISO standard, not in the ANSI NISO standard. So a little bit on the use cases and the situations. Now I'm getting down to mapping, the one-to-one, where you're using one knowledge organization system or taxonomy for another. So one with you have content that's already tagged with different, this is the one on the left, in different taxonomies, but you want to bring them together and have to one set of users. So you need to map one to the other. I mean, you might decide to do the other kind as well, but this way users can retrieve content that's been tagged, different sets of content that's been tagged with different taxonomies. Kind of the opposite is where you've got one set of content, but you've got different set of users, and they want to have different taxonomies. It could be internal and external users of an organization. It could be experts and non-experts. It could also be for you know, different localizations or regional, although not necessarily for different languages unless they already existed, because it's best practice to have a single multilingual taxonomy vocabulary. And then another way is kind of getting content from multiple sources and different content sets. The third here, you can also enrich a taxonomy this way by mapping one to another. Okay, deciding which direction to go. You know, you want to map to the larger taxonomy, the one with greater depth, the one with greater breadth, more structured taxonomy, maybe the better one, the one with higher quality, or if there's like one organization acquires another, the one that you're leading into. Of course, it is a problem if when one taxonomy is more detailed in one area and the other is more detailed in another area. So there are challenges. And you know, it's easier when they both share the same scope, and the retrieval taxonomy actually has has fewer concepts than the one that the one, because you're going kind of from narrower to broad. It's all, you can, when I say equivalent for mapping, you can also map from narrower to broader. But if you're mapping, it doesn't really work going from a hierarchical taxonomy to a faceted, because a faceted, you're kind of separating out, and the concepts are a little bit broader. You're going from pre-coordinated concepts to less, so that doesn't work very well. And also if there's inconsistency. So, oh wait, yeah. And from a facet to hierarchical also does not work. Okay, so the other is more complex. Just going from faceted to hierarchical doesn't work at all, really. Okay, combining two taxonomies in the same subject area into one. This is, you know, you're enhancing, and this, so I'm now talking about merging. So this is enhancing, and taxonomies are combined permanently. Concepts are added where there's no equivalent. But it's a good way to get additional alternative labels, because you're equivalent, but maybe they had one label in one taxonomy and a different in another. And some situations for merging that, you know, you'd have different, the common one is like different departments of an organization have different taxonomies, and now you want to have one for this whole organization, or one organization merges with another, or you have an uncontrolled list of keywords. Maybe you've heard of folksonomy. People are tagging with keywords that are not in a controlled vocabulary. So that's also a practice of merging, although one of them isn't really a controlled vocabulary to begin with. And combining an internally created taxonomy with an external licensed taxonomy. And then here are just some examples of going when it's going from the merged one that will go away into the primary one. And so again, using a tool, and Poolparty does this, you can get automatic matches that maybe, you know, when I say the taxonomist doesn't need to consider, and, you know, kind of just approves more quickly, versus those that if you're matching from an alternative label to a preferred, it might need review. And then sometimes they're inexact matches as well. So I'm going to show.
Heather, I've got a question here.
Yeah.
Can I throw in a question?
Yeah.
Well, and also, by the way, we're 10 minutes away from the end.
Good. Now that's the end of the
How do you solve mapping? Okay. How do you solve mapping when your taxonomies have another granularity, in parentheses, deeper, larger scope, etc.? Can you go deeper into this? Is it easier to merge?
No, it's not a matter of easier. It's like, what's the use case? The merging is you're getting rid of one taxonomy, you'll have only one in the end. If that's okay, then that's easier. But if you want to keep them distinct for some use case, because they're still being used individually, then the mapping won't be comprehensive. That's the problem. It will, you know, what's equivalent. And what can be used for the other. I don't know if I'm going into that quite as well. Let me give the demo here, and then if we have still some time, I'll try to answer it better.
Okay, and if there's anybody else who wants to pose a question, please do put it in the chat, and keep in mind the Slido to put in your opinion on the Slido survey. So go ahead.
Yeah, I have to log in because I was out for a while. All right, so I have a project here on jobs. I also have this other, so these are actually, when we're merging or mapping, the different vocabulary projects have to be available, and I'm gonna map these two here. So maybe you know the NACE is a statistical classification of economic activities in the European community. And this jobs one I had created for various other demo projects, but it does have an industry hierarchy in it. No, well, it's not hierarchical in it, but it has it has a concept scheme. This is project linking, all right? And so I had linked it to this other one here, and you can, you know, expand it, and then I can map to it. So for example, I might decide that education management maps to education. And I have it set here, but I can control even what model and scheme, its default on SCOS, and what kind of match. These are all the different matches. So the first, yeah, I was accepting exact match. Batch linking, now I haven't turned it on yet, but if I click on link, it will find matches where the preferred labels match. So civil engineering was the same in both of these vocabularies, or preferred label and alternative label. So I put some alternative labels into my list of industries, so I would get at least some to show you. So computer software match is and software publishing. So one is the alternative label for the other. And then I can, approve or not approve here. And go through. And then when I get them added, yeah.
Can you expand it? Can you expand it with the arrow on the left?
Oh, yeah, I should do that. Yeah, I should show that where it's found in the hierarchy. And then this is actually here it's showing the whole
the URI.
Yeah, URI of it. But the label here is construction, and here it's construction. And it's sometimes good to look at this instead of just checking them all off, because there could be a different meaning. And
especially for those preferred label, alt label, where it's basically different, right?
Yeah,
the computer software and the software publishing.
Then I can revert it back.
I think you can show it still.
Yeah, because I put it back.
And we see in the local project, it's the alternative label, right? That matches.
Yeah, well, yeah, I had off. Now here it's under publishing activities, and so the question is, oh, is that really what it means? I would have to actually look at it further to decide. But I just wanted to show, if I do add some of them, pref label to pref label, performing arts is no problem, and telecommunications, that I start building the approved ones in this list here. And I could also in the tree view. I think that's all I really need to show now. Is there something else I should show? Because I do want to give some more time for questions. I think we want to leave them 5 minutes for question. Yeah. So I think I'll stop. Yeah, that was it. And there's our contact information. Maybe I'll just leave this up, and we'll let us know Chris, what other questions are there? And I'll get back.
Well, at the moment, I don't see any at the moment. If there is anything else you would like to say, otherwise we can wrap it up a little bit early if you want. We're going to go to a break after this in less than 4 minutes. Yeah. So if everything's been said, then
okay, I'm going to put into the chat a link to a larger presentation on that, and also the URL for my blog, The Accidental Taxonomist, because again, in order to access the chat, I have to stop sharing.
Yeah, your book on the accidental taxonomy, that's a great title.
Well, I'm not trying to promote merely the book, but the blog. I blog. Let's see here, I saved a couple of things here. Usually monthly on taxonomy related topics. Although I'm starting to do ontology topics as well. But that link in the right margin also lists upcoming presentations and workshops.
And you're based in Boston, right?
Yes.
So I mean, the importance of being part of ENDORSE 2021. Why is it so important to you?
Oh, well, I'm based in Boston, but I work for Semantic Web Company, which is based in Vienna. So I have this strong European connection with that. And I've been presenting at Taxonomy Bootcamp London, and that's where I actually first met Denis Deschamps, and he told me about this upcoming conference back in October 2019. So I'm impressed to see how it evolved. Yeah.
This is it's impressive to me that there are roughly 100 speakers on this over 4 days, and it's maybe not unique, but I think is it not a rare occasion for data experts like yourself to get together and trade notes?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much to Heather, to Helmut. Thank you very much for the presentation, for the workshop, and to those who posed the questions. Okay, I am told to begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to track 2. And we are going to have another workshop here. This workshop being on how to leverage taxonomies for content findability and usability with Joyce van Aalten of Invenier. Joyce, you're an independent taxonomy consultant and trainer. Your customers include the airline KLM, Philips Electronics, EEAS, the diplomatic wing of the EU, and the thesaurus for the Dutch House of Representatives. Joyce is specialized in taxonomy management tools, and you're co-author of a book on findability. Let me remind you on the tech side, questions you can put in the chat. You can also speak if you want. Let us know to pose a question or make a comment, as this is a workshop. There's also a Slido survey, so you go to slido.com and you enter the hashtag endorse 2021, and that same hashtag is for tweeting as well.
Okay.
So there you go. That's it. I think I will. This will be recorded for future viewing for anyone who would like to see it in the future as well. Joyce, I hand it to you.
Yes, great. Thank you very much, Chris, and welcome all to this workshop. Yes, as Chris already mentioned, it will be a workshop. So we have a limited number of participants, and also I would like to invite you to make this an interactive session of limited number of participants, so we can have a chat. Also, if you would like to share your video, you're more than happy. I would really be happy if you do so, to have a little bit of feeling who I'm talking to. So that would be great. But of course, you can also use the chat, speak up, and I will have some Slido polls in it as well. I will start sharing my screen with the PowerPoint. So we can go to this one. The only disadvantages of sharing the screen is that I can't see the chat anymore. So Chris, if there are any questions in the chat, please help me in just interrupting and
Joyce,
asking them.
Yeah, absolutely. I will interrupt rudely, brutally when I get a question.
Yeah, fine by me. Okay, thanks. Okay. What I want to do with you in the upcoming hour is explain a little bit on how you can use taxonomy, so to leverage taxonomy, but also tailor to your specific needs. Chris already introduced me, so I can skip the next slide on who I am, but I'm a little bit curious on who you are. So here's the first Slido poll. If you go to slido.com and there's a hashtag, it's a little bit different than the official endorse hashtag. So it's 16050. Also a really fancy QR code in this slide if you would like to use that one. With a little bit on who you are. Let's see. So now I have to switch in my screen to see who you are. So please go to the Slido and I'll start share my screen. If it's working, yeah, there the first input is coming up. Welcome, Anna. You're the knowledge management officer. I hope you're not alone. I hope you're not the only one in this workshop. Yeah, thanks for adding the hashtag Slido in the chat. It's also over there. I have to share my screen with the so you can also meet each other. I see there's some KM, a lot of knowledge management people as well, information architects from Eurostat. I like the job title, Thomas, the KM officer. To the rescue, something like that. Okay. Okay, yeah, just please keep filling these in, and so we I will come back to you later with some questions I have for you. So nice to meet each other, sort of in person. What I would like to do now is to start sharing my screen again with the PowerPoint and do a short introduction. So I have some slides for you. The second part of the workshop will be more interactive. And basically that is also the small agenda I made for you. Let's start with a few slides on what is a taxonomy. And I will keep them very short because perhaps some or maybe all of you did join the workshop that was in the track before me by Hedden and Helmut Nagy on what taxonomy is. Really good. If you missed it, please re-see it. But what I want to do is, because there might be some different definitions on what a taxonomy is, briefly share what I see for this workshop as a taxonomy. And to start with a definition, what it is, there are a lot of definitions. Let me emphasize that again. But the way I see it is a list of predefined, so that's controlled terms, that can be used to tag all types of content. That could be documents, pages, photos, people, whatever. So content really, and could be really a lot of things. What it does, I think that's really something we should keep in mind. Why do we create a taxonomy? We want to improve findability and reusability of content, of that content that I just mentioned before. And I think another great point to touch on is that with a taxonomy, you give like a semantic context to that piece of content. So you can say either what it is or what it is about. And therewith, you enrich that piece of content with that semantic context, and you give meaning to that piece of content. So even if, like in this case, we have to do with ambiguous terms, if you Google or search in a digital asset management system or whatever with any search engine on kiwi, you get a lot of pictures of kiwis. But perhaps I wasn't looking for that piece of fruit, but I was looking for this little bird that cannot fly, only walk, and lives in New Zealand. So we have to do with this ambiguity of terms, and that is something where a taxonomy comes in. It also helps us with distinguishing synonyms, or actually connect content that is on the same subject, but we call it differently. Do we call it fall, or do we call it autumn? Now, these are tags that is basically, we mean the same, but we have different wording for it. Also, another thing that I want to, the way I use it, the term taxonomy in this workshop, as an overarching term. So now Hedden and Helmut in the previous workshop explained brilliant the differences, but also for time saving, I just use taxonomies for everything. So it can also be called knowledge organization systems, but I use it as an overarching term for controlled vocabularies, control lists, taxonomies, thesauri, ontologies, knowledge graphs, etc. However, just to give a small, some examples of what the differences could be. This could be a controlled list of all kind of foods. I love eating and food, so many of my examples have to do something with food. But this could be a controlled list, an authority file, with just terms, no relationships between them, just a flat alphabetical list. If we're going to put these terms in a hierarchy and relate them hierarchical to them, we create a taxonomy. And also, what can be, but not always, but can be the case that you enrich this taxonomy with synonyms. So basically, you start enriching this controlled list. As you can see here in the example, we could have all kind of fruits, strawberries being a sort of berry and lemons being a sort of citrus fruit. If we go one step further, we get the thesaurus. And then we will also add definitions and associative relations. It can be much more richer. We follow specific ISO standards, etc.
Joyce, I already have a question here, if I might jump in here.
Sure.
How to leverage taxonomies for content findability and usability?
I will come up with that in just 2 slides. Just please bear with me, and then because this is the last one, the knowledge graph, and basically much more richer relationships between the relations, between the terms, between the concepts.
Oh, I see. Wait a minute. It's my mistake. Somebody sent it to me as the title of the discussion. Never mind.
Okay, yeah, because
Sorry
that was
about
basically.
That. I followed my sword.
Not a problem.
Sorry,
because
please continue.
No, this is the main question that we are trying to answer in this
yeah,
workshop.
it's a punchline. Okay.
Yeah, good to remind me to that.
Okay.
Because actually, this is where we the question that we want to.
There it is.
Yes, exactly. How can we leverage? Whether we call it a taxonomy, a thesaurus, ontology, whatever. How can we? Because we don't create a taxonomy just by printing it and putting it on the wall. Perhaps I do that as an independent taxonomy consultant, but I think most of the organizations, the taxonomy has to give added value to the content we want to make findable and reusable. So I've put in, I've categorized them. Of course, as a taxonomist, I want to categorize all kind of things, and also these are some taxonomy functionalities that I would like to discuss with you. I have some screenshots that I have in these slides, so to really show them how you can use them. I think one of the first how we can use the taxonomy is for using it via full text search and really enriching your enterprise search system. And there are some functionalities that you can use the taxonomy for. I think one of the most used or most obvious one, perhaps, is that you search on a taxonomy tag. The taxonomy, we're going to use that, or we'll use it for tagging, so applying the taxonomy term to that piece of content, and we can search on that tag. That's really an obvious one, but I want to point it as one of the first one, because it might seem obvious, but it's really a good one, because in this example, this is from a digital asset management system, and here again, here are the food again. If you search on a full text and I type in berries, I will get search results, everything that has berries in it. That could be the title, that could be somewhere in the metadata, in a description. But if you search on a taxonomy tag, so you really indicate this picture, in this case, has berries on it, it really helps to improve your search results. because you only get these pictures that has berries on it, and not where we have somewhere in the description, this is a bowl where there used to be berries in it or something. So your search results will be much more precise. So that is one of the taxonomy functionalities that you can use. And slightly different user interface, but basically it has the same functionality. But it's not only in the full text search, so when typing, but also when you find a piece of content, that could be on a website or on the internet. If you put these topics, these topics are really basically taxonomy concepts. If you put them near an article and you make them clickable, you can also help users finding relevant content for them. So it's not just typing in and retrieving it via the full text, but also if you have a piece of content, you click on it and it will start a new full text or a search on that specific taxonomy term. What it also can do, this taxonomy, and now we're back to, when you as a user start typing your search query, a taxonomy can help a user in formulating his or her search query. I think we all know the autocomplete functionality. So when I start typing, it gives me suggestions. In many engines, these suggestions are based on words that are indexed, so that are somewhere in the content. But if we use a taxonomy with these autocomplete functionality, you get much more precise and much more detailed suggestions for search queries. In this example, if I start typing with DE, it will fill me with Denver and Detroit. But it is really nice that you can also have the context of this specific search query or this specific taxonomy term. Now, we can see here that Denver, it is part of the location in the taxonomy. And if we translate that to the Kiwi example I've showed you before, if someone starts typing Kiwi, we can give them a little bit more context to say, okay, in the taxonomy, we have either kiwi as a piece of fruit, but also kiwi as a specific type of animal, a specific type of bird. So also that helps in formulating the search query, but also in making the findability of content much more better. There are a lot of the screenshots where they show there are a lot of different ways to implement these kind of functionalities. And this is another way of basically the same functionality, so help formulating a search query, but it is more expanded with also synonyms in it, because it's based on really more on the thesaurus, so it also has synonyms, etc. in it. But also what you see on the right-hand side of the screen, it helps you in if you find something, but that's perhaps is not specific enough, to give you other search terms, other concepts from the taxonomy that you can use for your search query. So these are that could be more general, so broader terms. That could also be more specific terms, but also some more related terms. So these are from the associative relationships from a thesaurus. So, you could imagine that if I'm a user and I've done a search query and I can't find what I'm looking for, this might help me in redefining my search query with more specific or related terms. A taxonomy is also something that you can use more like under the hood of your search engine and help improving your full text search results without even for the users knowing that they are using a taxonomy. In this case, more specific, a synonym list. What you see here is that if you search in a full text via full text, in this example, in Office 365 example, we use the full text search engine here. If someone types on television, it will automatically expand, but also the synonyms that we've provided to the search engine. So television and TV, we define these as synonyms, although it might be acronyms, but that's as how we defined it. So it will also, when searching on television, it will also come up with results that don't have television in it, but only TV. So that's another way of improving your full text search results. How you can also use it. There's so many ways you can use the taxonomy, but this is also something how to improve your full text search results. Is to most of the search engines have a relevancy ranking. Goes way too far to explain that, but you could improve this relevance ranking by saying that if a search result actually has a taxonomy term as a tag applied to that piece of content, it would be more relevant. That would be really obvious, and that is something that you can use to not manipulate but improve your search results and the relevancy scoring of the search results. The things what I've shown here until now are really to more expand your search results, but there also might be cases that you don't want to expand your search result, but you want to narrow it down. Say you have you do a full text search and you have millions of results, you want to narrow it down. That's what we call the refine search or the faceted search approach. That can be done, these refiners can be based on really formal metadata, like date, the author, etc. But I think this is also something where taxonomy, and more specific, a faceted taxonomy, could come in really, really handy. And you can see that in this example, where on the left-hand side, you see the refiners of a full text search. And you can see that we can narrow it down by a content type, but also by an industry topic or medical specialties, etc. So by clicking on one of these, it would narrow down my results just as specific as I want them to be. Okay, so that was the functionalities for full text and optimizing your full text search engine. But there are more. Also functionalities in what I call for discovery. So then you will help users that not really know what they're looking for. They are more browsing, rely on serendipity on how to find results. And this is also where a taxonomy could be really useful. And some examples of that, I think we all know, or perhaps have used it on a website, the recommendation or more like this functionality. So this is where, if you use an e-commerce website and you find a piece that you want to buy, Amazon will ask you, are you also interested in this? This is something that is similar, this functionality, but it's based on the taxonomy. So you find a piece of content, that could be an article, that could be a picture, it could even be a person, and you think, this is interesting, not exactly what I'm looking for, but give me more on this. So this more on this, how could that be, how could that work? You can, and how could the taxonomy work in this to make it more specific? You could say, we have this piece of content, it is tagged with, in this case, radiology, and it's a press release. You could say, give me automatically show with this piece of article all the press releases on radiology. So that is something how you can use the taxonomy to have this recommendation functionality in place. This is another example of this, more like this recommendation functionality, where you can see it's based on a graph search, based on of the Semantic Web Company, where you can see I have a specific piece of cheese, and based on the wine cheese similarity score, you can see what kind of wines are really good with this type of cheese. And another food example. Sorry, that's. I'm really a foodie, I believe, but the next example isn't. So I don't play football, but this is a nice example from the website from Adidas. And they use what I think is really interesting, what you also can do if you use a taxonomy, is what I call dynamic content clustering. You can see here we have a number of football shoes, and these are a specific type of football boots. Namely, they are sock football shoes. I don't play soccer, but this is what I found. But if you look at it, you can see that it is this category is a cluster of basically three tags, namely the socks, the football, and the shoes. So now, by doing this and putting these pieces of tags on the content, you can make dynamic clustering. You can say, okay, give me, and you see that on the left-hand side in the front navigation, give me all the sock football boots, but you can also say, give me just the football boots or the kids football boots, or I think you get the point how dynamic you can use this, and it makes you a lot more flexible also in creating, if there's you want to have a promote a typical a specific product, it's more easily to do that when you have this taxonomy and these tags in place. So that's for finding and improving discovery of content. Another thing how we can use the taxonomy, and it's more like we move to the thesaurus part, but to have a common use and understanding of terminology. Now, within an organization, how can we speak the same language? How do we agree on if you use term A, that I use the same term, and we know exactly what it is? That is also something where the taxonomy comes in. Here's a screenshot of the Eurovoc with a lot of, in this case, translations in it as well. So we have this multilingual thesaurus. So it doesn't matter in which language you have a concept, you have a term, we all know what it is and what we mean by that. So that is really more for reference. It's also useful in here, this example, what I've shown you before, with the full text search, but you can see, and this is also helpful for useful for people, a description. So if we, if a user does a search on wind farms, you get a description on, and basically this is a definition. Here's it's called a description, but what exactly is it? And also here you can see the synonyms. Okay, we can call it wind farms or wind parks, but we agree within our organization that we use wind farms instead of wind parks. So that is our preferred term in that. So also something where the taxonomy comes in. Questions so far? I keep this. And otherwise, it's just an excuse for me to grab a sip of water.
Yeah, at this point, I don't see any, but I'll keep an eye out. I see there are quite a few people still watching. It would be nice to get somebody to jump in there. You can be part of the discussion too, if you'd like. You can either send a question in the chat, or you can ask to go online and talk. So feel free, don't be bashful. We have, let's see, we have about 20 minutes left now, is that right? 20, hang on a second. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to ruin the party at the end, so thanks, Chris. The options I've shown you and in the previous slides are really some things that you can see in the you know, if you know that there's a website making use of a taxonomy or digital asset management system, something that you see on the front end. But there are more options how to use a taxonomy, but there are more like under the hood of a system. So not something I can show you with screenshots, but at least something I can tell you and make you aware of. I think one important is the taxonomy can support how you deal and manage your content. So the first already showed a little bit, but the Adidas example, where you can pull applicable and reuse of content where relevant. So you might have a lot of content in your content management system, but you don't want to show everything on the website. So with a taxonomy, you can pull the content that is applicable and put it on these places where it's relevant. And it can also help you in topics and insights on topics to be used. I actually did that one for one of my customers where we had a taxonomy in place, and that taxonomy was applied to articles of their website. And then we found out that some taxonomy terms weren't used or weren't used that often. So that was for them an indicator that their content wasn't, what they actually did is start adding extra content on these specific taxonomy topics, because they agreed that it was important, but there wasn't enough content on. So that's how they used it, and that's how you can get also insights into be used topics. And also it helps you in making collections of content on pages, like a query building, and that can be done manually or automatically as well. It also, and that's also something that you use on the hood, but more important also in relation to the buzzwords that we have, like the artificial intelligence, but that is really something where a taxonomy can be useful in. But also to improve automated tagging. The examples that I gave before, I did on how you manually use the taxonomy. But of course, if you have a lot of content, that's not something that is really doable. So You want to improve that, do the tagging more automated or semi-automated, and that is also something where taxonomy can be really, really useful. And you see that here as an example, where we use the artificial intelligence combined with the taxonomy to give really good improve the text of the content via the taxonomy that you have.
Joyce, can I throw in something here? I got something from Christine Laboudi, who is watching with us. She says, another simple way for improving discoverability, embedding schema.org microdata. Schema about that refers to taxonomy concepts inside your web page. These microdata are processed by main search engines.
Yes, exactly. And this is and that's a good point. I did actually make it's a lot of functionalities, but I actually made a selection of how the taxonomy can work. So yeah, that's another good one. Actually, taxonomy for SEO, perfect as well. But you know, my time is limited, and but a good good suggestion. Sure. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks to Christine.
Thanks. Yeah. Are there any other questions? I did have a look at the chat.
Yeah, questions or comments? I'm watching, and I'll let you know. I'll jump in when I get them.
Great, thanks. Well, actually, I think I've been talking enough for a workshop.
Okay. All right.
I want to.
Well, let me see. I have, let's see, a couple questions in store. Hold on. Yeah, okay. A couple have come in. Can you identify any trends in the search queries? Are there functionalities that are becoming more useful and more requested by the users?
Yeah. Yes, I think, and the two main ones that pop up is, and it's actually not a new one, but it's I think it's a here to stay one, and that is of course the faceted search. What I did show you with the refiners, that is what I see in a project that I've been doing. Yeah, actually here to stay, but also. And I think that is the other one is the recommendation. You know, I think we are stepping more and more away from the traditional search. So typing in, Googling, typing in, getting results, and browsing through them all. We are more and more relying on the recommendation functionality. And now what I've shown is with the taxonomy, but I think that will also be more and more personalized. And that is something I haven't shown in the slides, but you can imagine that a taxonomy, and if you fill in a profile based on a taxonomy where your interests are, that could really also improve and tailor those search results to your specific needs. So basically, these are three things that I see in the search engine world.
Okay, I've got another question here. Before leveraging, and everyone else, please send in any questions you have through the chat. Before leveraging a taxonomy it is important to make the decision that you need one. Where is the border where you see a taxonomy as bringing value in comparison with a simple list of codes?
So when do you slide from the regular list to a taxonomy?
Yeah,
I think that's
taxonomy. Yeah, what is the threshold? What do you need to move to the taxonomy instead of simple codes?
It depends. I'm a consultant, so that's the the answer I give most times. And it depends on how you want your system to work. So I never start actually with developing a taxonomy, but first identify the needs for a taxonomy. But this is exactly the question. And how do you identify the need for a taxonomy? I think that basically comes from your users. So, really get to know your users. Who are they? What kind of language do they speak? And also look into the type of content you have and the type of content you want to make more findable. How large is it? What is it about? And so these are the starting points. And
how about an example? Can you give us an example? For instance, the thesaurus for the Dutch House of Representatives. So can you just talk about that as a case study in taxonomy?
Yeah, but I would like to use. I think I would like to use the other example I've shown for the Philips website and intranet.
Sure.
That started small, basically, with just a need for okay, and it's we have a large intranet, and we want to make that more findable, but it's not doable to do that all manually. So to do that all by hand. And that's where it grow into basically a simple list into a taxonomy. And but there are a lot of other customers with the same problem I see on the website. A lot of content is growing, and I think the content managers are getting kind of frustrated because it takes a lot of time to see what to maintain, to have insight in the content. So then that's really the point where you have the need for taxonomy, and where that keeps popping up. Yeah.
Okay, and what about KLM? Can you give what work did you do with them on taxonomy?
That's basically the same with what I said with the website, and getting a messy, sort of messy website, hard to maintain. So that's also where the taxonomy came in. Yeah.
What were can you just talk about what the challenges were? I mean, messy in what way?
Messy in having inside a lot of duplicate content, not up to date, not knowing what it is about, but also for people hard to find exactly where it is. So basically also not giving the right information at the right time to the right person. So that were the indicators.
Is that a typical problem with websites of companies, governments?
Yeah, especially if they're large and containing a lot of content, but also if you see that there's a difference in use of language between the organization and the people that are using the website. So also, if you look at medical websites, there's a really not a common language between the patients and the specialists, for instance. So that is also really a gap that you want to bridge with a taxonomy.
I might remind those watching to please, before we wrap things up at the hour, and with you, Joyce, we'll wrap things up in the next 20 minutes, is to go to slido.com and that hashtag endorse 2021 to put in your recommendations for the future. This being day 2, we have 2 more days of these events, and very very important to hear from you as well. And if you would like to put in any questions and comments from what Joyce was talking about, or anyone else, let's say, during track 2 today. Would be good to hear from you. Joyce, what about with the European External Action Service? Can you tell anything about that, about how you helped them to improve their data?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is something that's really in the beginning of the project, but really good. What we're doing there is to see how UVoc as a starting point for can be used as a taxonomy to really tailor it to the specific organizations, wordings, and exactly what they need. So now UVoc is really great as always, but it's sometimes you need to make it more organization specific, with acronyms, with because every organization is different, has its own acronyms, its own wordings. So that's what we're looking at over there to make it.
I think what can be especially challenging is this is the EU 27 with 24 official languages.
Mm-hmm.
It must make it even more challenging, right?
Exactly. Then you get the multilingual part as well. And now I think what I can say about that is you can start small and then the taxonomy can keep growing. And taxonomy is never finished. So it's something that you have to maintain all the time. So that's you can start small and it can get bigger and bigger and larger. So that's something that yeah.
When do you? So that you had that question about making the jump from a simple list of codes to taxonomy. What about the jump from taxonomy to ontology, to evolving data? Yeah,
that is something in what I see in projects. And when you start with a taxonomy, in some cases you can come to the point that you see that the typically taxonomy relationships are not sufficient anymore. So you want to make.
Give an example of that in your experiences with these different clients.
Yeah, for example, if you see that there's and the medical domain is a good one, and that. But if you have a list of medical specialties, but also with diseases, kind of products that you have, business units, to name a few. You can make associative relationships between them. They have something to do with each other. But if you want to make that more precise, say, a business unit is working on that product and that product is useful for that disease, you start creating your own ontology to make that relationships more precise on that.
Now, we talked a bit about that with Dermot a little bit earlier about digitizing healthcare and including with the COVID crisis, I think, and this push by some for a European health union is I guess is going to be a big opportunity for data people like yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. Shall we ask some of the people to give some input? At least
yes, that would be great
as well.
Would anyone else like to jump in there? You could, with the Slido, you can do that.
And I've prepared a Slido. So
you did?
I did. Yeah, I have
Excellent.
some questions.
Okay. Let's see what we get.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Let me check. I've created, because I'm very curious on the people that joined today.
Yeah.
What status is of a taxonomy? You can see my screen, right? With the poll.
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you go to slido.com and you go to that hashtag,
exactly.
and then you put in. You answer these
1605. Right? Oh, it's not the official ENDORSE hashtag. So let me see what don't see any results.
And while we're waiting, there's a comment here that I can read out. It is also important to be able to compare content across different websites. How do you choose which existing taxonomy is the one to use? That's a tricky one.
Yeah, that's the fun part of my work and things that I think I'll be doing all day.
Don't just tell me it depends.
But it does. Sorry.
Like the other one.
No. But it depends on something. Of course. If you have like, I've done this before where I have like two websites or two systems and I call it differently. I think the first thing that you do is identify that it is used differently. Now, if you compare these lists, you see that there are differences. And I think as a taxonomist, I'm not deciding on what is the best, what should be the preferred label. I think this is exactly where the subject matter experts come in place, and they will have a discussion on, actually what is it called? But it starts with the discussion: is it the same? Is it exactly the same? Is it almost the same? Should we have this as synonyms in the taxonomy, or is it not? So, and I think in most of the cases, there's a lot of discussion on, but in most of the cases, at the end, someone says, okay, we go with your term, or we go with this term because it is more complete, or it is more, it describes better what we're using for. So, what was the question again? How to manage two taxonomies, right?
Yeah, two taxonomies. Well, I mean, how to choose which existing taxonomy is the one to use between different websites.
Yeah, you can use, or you can go with a new one that can be used for both websites. But if you have like more than one website, I think then you should really use a taxonomy management system where you store the taxonomy and it gets pushed to the appropriate to both of the websites where it is used. Yeah.
Okay. I see you've got 16 inputs on your Slido.
Let me see now how to show results. Yeah, here it is. So, okay, good. Yeah, that most of you will be developing a taxonomy in upcoming months. So that's and I'm really curious on who answered where it's fully operational and works like a charm, the taxonomy. Yeah, but that is really interesting because taxonomy a few years ago when I started in this business, and it has been more than 10 years now, taxonomy was really like, what is it? Now, nobody has heard of it, but it's really something that there's more attention to, more organizations using it, but also that's why I've put it in. Sometimes it's used as the new buzzword. If we apply a taxonomy, all our messy content will be solved. If your content is messy and it's not up to date, a taxonomy won't solve it. Sorry for that, but I see that's more how it's used lately as well. So
I wonder among the happy now the happy 29% there, how they overcame whatever challenges there were to make it work like a charm. I mean, it'd be nice to hear from one of you who is happy about how things work with a fully operational organization using taxonomy. What you overcame to get there? That would be interesting to know. What are to you, Joyce? What are the key stumbling blocks to getting to that point that you helped to overcome?
To have a fully operational taxonomy.
That works like a charm. How do you get there?
Takes a lot of time, a lot of patience. Now, involve, I think that's the involve the organization and make it something that is that people fully understand, get buy-in from your stakeholders, actually. And stakeholders being the end users, but also the management. I think one of the criteria where the taxonomy was really successful, where we had buy-in from the management or the upper level, so where they knew what the taxonomy was, what it could do, and so that is really one of the key principles. Yeah. Good to, yeah, the most difficult is and it's also the most difficult to get this buy-in. So, and then that's why I start every taxonomy project with not this presentation, but presentation with what can I do for our organization.
Yeah, I mean, how do you got to sell it? You got to sell it to the powers that be within the organization. I mean, I'm seeing from Baya Remaun saying, yes, the most difficult part is to get the buy-in.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so how do you sell it? How do you sell it to somebody who's saying, well, this is could it be maybe more trouble than it's worth?
Yeah, and that's with showing what the taxonomy can do. So look for the content management systems where the taxonomy could be of most added value. And that is where the content management systems that are messy, sloppy, not findable, etc. Describe what the taxonomy can do in terms of functionalities, you know, for the management buy-in, and let them see, you know, if we implement this, the findability will be better, there will be less, the reusability of content will be better, and skip the part on what you need to do with what you need to do to get to the taxonomy, with the hierarchical terms, and it's really interesting. But first, let's show what it can do for your organization.
Is it possible to correlate it with, I mean, with these examples that you worked with KLM, with Philips, with EAS, in terms of a better bottom line or more budget efficiency? Is there a way to sell it that way?
Yeah, I get a lot of questions on, so what's the return on investment of a taxonomy? Yeah. I'm a semantical kind of girl and not really good with statistics, etc. But it's really hard to, you know, point that out in terms of euros and what it will save. It's more like the fuzzy improvement of findability. So
that's the tricky part about the buy-in, then, is to try to sell it, even though it's almost like an intangible asset. And yet,
exactly,
we're in the middle of a digital revolution. We got, if you don't get it by now, you're going to be left behind, right?
Exactly. And perhaps you could, you know, the correlated to another buzzword like artificial intelligence or machine learning. You know, these heavily rely on taxonomies. So if you can convince them and show them that this machine learning is not just like a magic trick, you need to learn this machine what the semantically context is, and basically that is what a taxonomy does. So if you can explain that would be also good to get this management buy-in as well.
I guess the tricky thing, I mean, I've been listening to people like yourself over the last 2 days, and I will for a couple more days now, and it's so easy for me to get lost in the weeds and to understand the meaning of each part of this, but it is very important for the functioning of any organization or company to upscale their data, the way they process their data, and the way they get to talk to each other from one country to another.
Exactly. Do we have time for another question from my side?
Yes, please, go ahead. We got 4 minutes left. Go ahead.
Okay, and I have another. Let me go. We have Slido.
Everybody get ready.
Okay. Yeah. I was wondering in what information systems your taxonomy then will be used. It's for the people that have a taxonomy. So they can, of course, be modern.
Now, I think how many more questions do you have, Joyce? I didn't realize you had a number of them.
Just one after this, but it's okay if we.
Now let's do it too, because we've got another 10 minutes to wrap up with questions, Q&A, and also with the so that's fine. We can discuss this in the last few minutes. We will put that invite people to finish with a Slido survey on their suggestions for the future. But right now, let's look at this. In which information systems will the taxonomy be used?
So I think the website is but it started with the digital asset management. Of course, there's a small could be a small overlap between the website and the enterprise search, but that's a good search on your website. So
also intranet too, because
exactly
similar, right?
Exactly.
Although internet would be more sort of closed circuit, right, to avoid hacking.
Yeah. Exactly. This is interesting. The website, and I see that with my customers as well. A lot of times the taxonomy is used on, for recommendation, the more like this functionality. But also for the content management optimization, that's a good one. So the website is a really useful one. But also, of course, I've pulled them together, and that is misspelling as I see on the records document management and archive system. Also really interesting.
Right.
And if you look at the digital asset management system, the pictures, the assets that we have in there, they really heavily rely on metadata and on proper taxonomy terms. What do I see on a picture? What do I see on a video? The machine learning algorithms and digital asset management systems are really improving. But again, if we can help them, and that's actually a thing I did on for digital asset management system for a customer, where they could use smart tagging, and the algorithms are getting much more intelligent to see what actually is on a picture or on a video, so they can do that automated. But if you incorporate it with a taxonomy, it's the precision and recall will be much better on this. I'm a little bit surprised that the collaboration tool is somewhere at more down, because I think the taxonomy is also used, but perhaps not named as such, in Office 365 or SharePoint environments. Also being some kind of collaboration tool that also could be really useful as well. One thing I want to point out here, because that was a bit tricky of my question, but no, I did have the option that you could have more than one system to select. And what I want to say there, it's that is also something where the taxonomy could be really useful, to use it in more than just one system, not just as a silo for your website or just for your digital asset management system, but just as a company-wide taxonomy, and use within more than one system. But that's really where the a taxonomy management tool comes in, and you really need one. I'm looking at the question.
Do you want to ask your last question? I guess we can go ahead with that. You want to pitch your last? If people can answer it quickly, and we can discuss that quickly.
Restricted by that. But
what
do you
taxonomic
know
functionalities do you foresee as most relevant? Yeah.
So like the, now then you can, this is a ranking poll. So if you, I want to see that there are also questions in the Slido.
You have questions in the Slido?
Yeah, as well. I would like to
go ahead and answer one while we're waiting, if you want.
but sure, I'm reading them all. Martina has my favorite taxonomy tool. It depends. Now I'm I'm not I'm an independent consultant, so and actually it does depend on how large your taxonomy is. If you can use open source tooling or not. You know, if you use for really a basic taxonomy, there's like an open source tool that's called Taxonomies. It's not really fancy, but it can do the trick for you. But there also, if you want to move more into like the really semantic suites, where you can do also the text mining, corpus creation, etc. There are really good tools like a pool party, but also Vocbench is, of course, it's also a really good taxonomy tool that you can use and is available. But if you want to move more into the ontology, you have like Protégé. It's really like an ontology tool. So I think it all starts with define what you need. If you need a taxonomy, ontology, thesaurus, and then select a tool with that. Martina, you can drop me an email if you want. They have another presentation and slides on taxonomy tooling, and I'm more than happy to share that with you if you want to.
Okay, great. Let's try to wrap this up in the next minute or so.
Yeah. This is a nice one. So the technology enhances, what I expected as the big winner, but also help formulating the search query and improved full text
search.
results.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good one. The recommendation, that's funny because we all said the taxonomy would be heavily used on websites. And I think the recommendation is typically one for a website. So that's funny, good, interesting, and really thanks for sharing your input on this. It makes for me also more interactive and fun to do this workshop. So really thank you for that.
Joyce, if you're done with the Slido, what I'd like to do is invite everyone, if they haven't yet, to go to Slido now and go with hashtag endorse 2021 to send in your recommendations for the future. And as that is happening, maybe do you have a couple more questions that you got from the Slido that you can that we can discuss right up until 17:30?
Let me. I have a question on how often do you recommend review of existing taxonomies, and are there features that can help automate? Well, I wanted to say it depends. No, but on how large your taxonomy is, and also on the domain. You know, there are domains that are changing much more often than others. We have like these more dynamic domains and more static domains. So that depends. But I would say at least every month that you need to check perhaps your search statistics. Are people searching on terms that you didn't come up with? These are really excellent input. But also have a look at the content, new created content. Do these create any new, do they have new concepts that are not in the taxonomy? yet. And features that can help to automate is this, you have these tools where you can do the text analysis. You create a corpus of new content, and this can compare the new content or any content with the taxonomy that you have, and can come up with proposed new candidate concepts for your taxonomy. So yeah, there are features that can help you in that. I hope I answer all the questions.
Do you see in the chat on the WebEx chat, there's something in Dutch? You see that? From Annemieke?
Yeah, I can see it. Oh.
Because I don't understand Dutch, but maybe you can paraphrase it in English and you can answer it.
It was an internal message.
Never mind. Okay, fine.
Yeah, but a good one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions you got on Slido at this point? Because we need to wrap this up now in the next 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think now some comments, and again, yeah, Martina, just give me drop me an email, or anyone who wants to know more on taxonomy toolings, or any other questions that that you have, drop me an email. I think the slides will be shared on the ENDORSE website as well, so you have my contact details, and I'm more than happy to have this really fun discussions on taxonomy.
Okay, very good. Joyce van Aalten of Invenier, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you
for your presentation, for the workshop, and for handling the Q&A, and very interesting Slido surveys. That was really great. So this wraps up track 2 of day 2 on ENDORSE 2021, and please join us again tomorrow, where we'll be talking on day 3 about procurement and interoperability. I'll be on track 2 on solutions. Keep in mind that all of these discussions are recorded for viewing later on the ENDORSE site, in case you need to see them again, or if you missed them. And please, hashtag ENDORSE 2021, either for going on Slido and giving your recommendations, or tweeting your feelings and thoughts and any sound bites you heard over the day. Let's cast that wider and beyond. So thanks so much. We'll see you tomorrow again on ENDORSE 2021. Thank you.